Nathan Cole caught the foreman's wrist an inch before it reached Eleanor Hayes's face, and 40 men stopped breathing at once. He didn't shout. He didn't strike. He held that wrist the way a man holds a snake he's already decided not to kill, and he let the silence run long enough to hurt. Then he reached into his coat, pulled out a folded paper worn soft at the creases, and laid it flat on the boards. "Read the name," he said quietly. "Then tell me again who makes decisions here. If a story like this is worth your time, subscribe and stay with me all the way to the end, and leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled." Nobody moved. William Carter stood there with his arm still raised, his wrist locked in a hand that had spent 20 years pulling calves and mending wire, and the thing that showed on his face wasn't pain. It was calculation. Carter had spent his whole life measuring rooms, and for the first time in 11 years at Red Canyon, the room was measuring him back. "Let go of me," Carter said. "I aim to." Nathan didn't. Directly. "You are a hired hand." "I've been called worse." Eleanor Hayes hadn't stepped back. That was the part the men would talk about later in the bunkhouse in the cookhouse in town, when the story got loose and grew legs that the bookkeeping woman hadn't flinched, hadn't run, hadn't done a single thing. A frightened woman was supposed to do. She stood with the ledger clutched against her chest like a child she'd carried out of a burning house, and her chin was up, and her eyes were wet, and she did not move 1 inch. Carter jerked his arm free. Nathan let him. "You've all seen it now," Carter said, turning to the yard, and his voice found that smooth pitch he used at church suppers and cattle auctions. "A drifter putting hands on the man who signs your pay. Reckon that tells you everything about the caliber of help we've—" "Read the name," Nathan said again. "I'll do no such thing." "Then I'll read it." He didn't pick the paper up. He put one finger on it the way a man might set his hand on a Bible, and he spoke slowly enough that the men in the back could hear. "Territorial Land Patent, Section 11 through 22. Red Canyon Holdings water rights on the North Fork recorded in Helena, 18 and 71. A pause. Owner of record, Nathan Cole. Somebody dropped a hat. Nobody bent to pick it up. Tom Prather said, "That's," and then stopped because his throat had quit on him. Carter laughed. It came out one note short of the sound he'd wanted. "Anybody can carry a paper." "That's true." "Anybody can forge a paper." "That's true too." Nathan finally lifted his head, and the men who had worked beside him for 3 months, who had eaten off the same tin, who had watched him mend fence in the heat without a word of complaint, who had let him take the worst horse because he never argued, those men saw something in his face they had never once seen there. "So you go on ahead and send for the recorder. Send for the marshal too while you're at it. I'd take it kindly." Carter's jaw worked. "That's what I thought," Nathan said. "You've been lying to every man on this place." Carter's voice went hard. 3 months of it, eating our beef, sleeping in that bunkhouse, letting these men take you for one of their own." "I've been listening," Nathan said. "There's a difference. You'd not know it." "And her." Carter's arm came up again, this time pointing, and Eleanor did not look away from it. "Did you lie to her too?" That was the one that landed. Nathan Cole was not a man who showed things, but something crossed him then, brief as heat lightning, and Eleanor saw it, and she hated that she saw it, because she had spent 3 months building a picture of a quiet, honest, poor man with rough hands and a slow voice. And now the picture was on the floor in pieces, and she was standing barefoot in the middle of it. "Yes," Nathan said. He didn't dress it up. He didn't explain. He just said it and let it sit there in front of 40 men and 1 woman. "Yes," he said again. "I did." To understand how a hired cowboy came to be standing in that yard with a land patent in his coat, you have to go back to the first week of June, 3 months earlier, when a widow stepped down off a supply wagon at Red Canyon with 1 trunk, 1 letter, and no idea at all what she was walking into. Her name was Eleanor Hayes, and she was 30 years old, and she had been a widow for 2 years and 4 months. And she had counted every one of those months. The teamster set her trunk down harder than he needed to. "That's Red Canyon," he said. "You sure about this, ma'am?" I'm sure. Women don't generally last out here. Women don't generally get asked to. He looked at her for a moment, then touched his hat brim and climbed back up. Well, he said, good luck to you. She'd been standing there about a minute when William Carter came out to meet her, and the first thing he did was smile, and the second thing he did was stop smiling. You're Hayes, Eleanor Hayes. The letter said E. Hayes. It did. The letter did not say a woman. It didn't say a man either. She held out her hand. He didn't take it. She let it fall without hurrying, without embarrassment, the way a woman does when she has already survived worse rudeness than this and priced it correctly. Mr. Carter, I presume? Foreman here, 11 years. He looked at the trunk. He looked at her. There's been a mistake. Perhaps, but the mistake wasn't mine, and it wasn't the letters. She drew it from her bag and held it up, folded the seal already broken. This offered me employment as bookkeeper at $40 a month with board beginning the first week of June. It's dated and signed. I signed the hiring here. Then you'll recognize your own hand. Carter took the letter. He read 4 words of it. Eleanor watched his face very carefully because she had spent her girlhood behind her father's counter watching men's faces when the numbers came out wrong, and she knew exactly what that particular stillness meant. It meant he had never seen the letter before in his life. Well, she said. Carter folded it back along its creases slowly. Handwriting's poor. It got here. You'll find things run a certain way at Red Canyon, Mrs. Hayes. I imagine every place does. The books have been kept by me, personally, for 11 years. Then my work should be very light. Behind Carter, one of the hands made a sound, a short, unwise, badly stifled laugh, and Carter turned his head about 2 inches, and the sound died so fast it was like it had been shot. That was the first thing Eleanor learned about Red Canyon, and she learned it in the first 4 minutes. Nobody laughed twice. Silas, Carter said without looking. Take Mrs. Hayes's trunk to the small house. Yes, sir. And Silas. Sir. You'll find something to occupy your mouth. Yes, sir. Eleanor did not move to help with the trunk, because she understood already that helping would cost the man more than it saved him. She followed. And it was on that short walk that she first saw the man she would spend 3 months misunderstanding. He was up on the corral rail doing something with a length of wire and a set of pliers, and he had his hat down and his sleeves rolled, and there was nothing about him to notice at all, except that when Silas came staggering under the weight of the trunk, the man came off that rail without a word, took one end, and had it balanced before Silas even knew he'd been helped. Obliged, Silas breathed. The man said nothing. Ma'am, Silas said, this here's Nathan. Come on in, April. Best hand with a bad horse I ever saw and the quietest man God ever built. Mr. Nathan. Cole, the man said. Nathan Cole. Eleanor Hayes. Ma'am. He touched his hat brim with 2 fingers, the trunk still on his shoulder, and that was the entire sum of their first conversation. She thought a hired man. She thought poor, decent, tired. She would think about that judgment many times later, and every time it would sting worse. They put her in the small house, which was 2 rooms and a stove, and Carter came by within the hour with an armful of ledgers and set them down on the table with a thud that was meant to be an answer. 1873 through the present, he said. Feedstock wages, freight timber tax. You'll find it in order. I'm sure I will. You'll find it in order, Carter repeated. Because it is in order. Some folks come out here from a town with a bank in it and think a ranch ought to keep books like a bank. It don't. Cattle die. Wagons break. A man walks off in the middle of a month and takes his wages with him, and there's no receipt for that, Mrs. Hayes. There's just the empty bunk. I understand. Do you? Do. Mr. Carter? She sat down. She opened the top ledger. She did not look up. I've kept books for a freight house, a feed store, and a mining company that failed. I know what a hard year looks like on paper. I also know what a lie looks like. I don't expect to find the second one here. There was a long pause behind her. No, Carter said. You don't. He left. And Eleanor Hayes, who had told exactly one small untruth in that speech, she had expected it. She had expected it from the moment a stranger's letter reached a widow in Kansas, offering her $40 a month to check another man's arithmetic, pulled the lamp closer, and began to read. It took her 4 hours to find the first one. Not a big one. That was what struck her. It was small, almost shy, a freight bill for $212, entered in March, and the same freight bill entered again in April, with the numbers reversed. 212, 221, $9. Nobody kills a man for $9. But $9 turned up again in May, and in June of the year before. And when she went back and started laying them, end to end, the $9 had brothers, and the brothers had cousins, and by midnight she had a column of small, honest-looking errors that added to $1,140, and not one of them had ever gone the wrong way. Errors go both ways. That's how you know they're errors. These only ever went one way. She sat back. She put her pencil down. She said out loud to no one, "Oh, you fool, you careful, careful fool." She meant Carter. She would find out later she also meant herself. In the morning she asked to see the wage book, and Carter gave it to her without hesitation, which frightened her more than a refusal would have. She read it anyway. And that afternoon she walked down to where the men were loading and asked a question that changed everything. "Mr. Prather." Tom Prather straightened up. He was maybe 50 with a bad shoulder he favored without seeming to know he did it. "Ma'am, you drew wages the first of the month." "I did." $30. Prather looked at her. Then he looked past her quickly the way a man checks a doorway. "22, he said. "The book says 30. "Book says a lot of things, ma'am." "Mr. Prather?" She kept her voice level and low. "Did you sign for 30 and receive 22? I signed where he pointed. "Do you read?" A pause. "No, ma'am." "How many of the men read?" Prather looked at his boots. 6 of us, out of 31. Eleanor felt something turn over in her chest, cold and slow. "And the $8, board," Prather said. "Doctoring, tools. There's always a reason, ma'am. Mr. Carter's got a reason for everything, and every one of 'em sounds fair when he says it out loud." He wiped his hands on his thighs. "You'd best not write my name down." "Mr. Prather, you'd best not write my name down," he said, and his voice cracked on it, and he was already walking away. She stood there in the middle of the yard holding a book that she now understood was a weapon, and she had absolutely no idea whose hand it was in. That evening she found Nathan Cole at the corral, and she was not looking for him, and she told herself so twice. "Mr. Cole?" "Ma'am?" "Do you read?" He looked over at that, just his head unhurried. "I do." "Do you draw $30 a month, 26, and receive?" Nathan hung the bridle up. He took his time about it. 26. "Every month. Every month." Why you and not Tom Prather? And there it was, the first crack, though she didn't recognize it as one. Because a hired man asked a question like that would have shrugged. A hired man would have said, "Ain't my business," or "Reckon I keep my head down," or "Carter likes me better," or any of the 100 things men say to get out from under a question. Nathan Cole said, "Because he knows Tom can't count it." Eleanor stared at him. "That's a hard thing to say," she said. "It's a hard thing to watch." "Then why watch it?" He turned around and faced her fully for the first time, and she registered that he was taller than she'd thought and older than she'd thought, and that his eyes were very steady. "Ma'am," he said, "what's your intention with them books?" "To make them true." "That all? Isn't that enough?" "No," Nathan said. "Truth don't do much lying on a table. Somebody's got to carry it somewhere." "Where would you carry it?" "That'd depend on who I could trust to be standing at the other end." They looked at each other for a moment, and Eleanor Hayes had the strangest sensation. The sensation of being weighed by a man who was not weighing her the way men usually weighed a woman. "You talk peculiar for a fence mender," she said. "I've been told." "By whom?" Something almost moved at the corner of his mouth. "Folks who wanted me to hush." She went back to the small house and did not sleep well. The next 10 days taught her the shape of the place. Red Canyon had 31 men, and every one of them was afraid. And the terrible genius of it was that not one of them could tell you exactly what they were afraid of. Carter never shouted. Carter never struck anybody. Carter remembered your mother's name and asked after her. Carter loaned a man $4 for medicine, and never once mentioned it again, and never once let him forget it either. She learned it fully the night the cook's boy broke the churn. "That's $1.60, Carter said pleasantly, in front of everybody. "Yes, sir. I'll pay it." "Course you will. You're an honest boy. Your daddy was honest, too." Carter smiled around the table. "Right up till the end." The boy went white. The men went quiet. Nobody asked what the end was. And Eleanor understood watching it that Carter had just performed a demonstration for 30 men, and it had cost him nothing, and it would hold them for a month. Afterward, she found Silas outside. "What happened to that boy's father?" "Ma'am, I'd rather not." "Silas." The old man rubbed his mouth. "Hanged himself," he said. 4 years ago. Owed near $60 to the ranch store, and couldn't never seem to get out from under it. Every month the figure got bigger, and he couldn't never say why." He looked at her. "You keep them books, ma'am. Maybe you can say why." "Was it Carter?" "Ain't nobody ever seen Carter do a thing," Silas said. "That's the whole of it. Ain't nobody ever seen him do a thing." That was the night Eleanor stopped being cautious and started being dangerous. She began copying. Not the ledger, she'd never have gotten away with that. She began copying the numbers into a small commonplace book in her own private shorthand, 3 or 4 pages a night, hidden under the floorboard she'd worked loose beneath the stove. And she began asking the men one at a time, quietly out, where the noise of the work would cover it. What were you told you owed, and what did you get, and what did he say? The reason was, most wouldn't answer, some did, and everyone who did said the same 7 words at the end: "Don't write my name down, Mrs. Hayes." She wrote them all down. Every name. It was the only way it would ever be worth anything, and she knew it, and it kept her awake. On the 14th of June, Carter came in without knocking. "You've been talking to my men." "I've been talking to men." "About wages." "About arithmetic." "You'll stop." Eleanor set down her pen. "Mr. Carter, I was engaged to examine the books. I can't examine a wage book without asking whether the wages were paid." "The wage book is signed." "With marks. 31 men and 25 of them sign with a cross." She let that sit. "A cross is not a signature, Mr. Carter. A cross is a man agreeing to whatever's above it." Carter came a step closer. He put his hat on the table crown down, which is bad luck, and which he knew was bad luck, and he did it slowly so she'd see him do it. "You're a widow," he said. "I am." 2 years, I hear." 2 years and 4 months. "Man dies, he leaves things behind. Debts, mostly." Carter's voice was gentle. That was what made it obscene. "A woman alone out here, no family, no property, no letter of character but the one she brought with her. That's a thin thread, Mrs. Hayes. A real thin thread. Wouldn't take but one man in Helena saying one word about her honesty, and that thread's cut, and there ain't a house in this territory would take her in." Eleanor's hands were shaking under the table. She made certain they stayed under the table. "Is that what happened to the last bookkeeper?" she asked. And for one full second, one William Carter's face did something. "There was no last bookkeeper," he said. "That's odd." She turned a page without looking down at it. "Because there's a hand in the 1875 ledger that isn't yours. It's smaller. It slants left. It stops in October of that year in the middle of a page." She lifted her eyes. "What was his name?" Carter picked up his hat. "Mrs. Hayes," he said. "There's an evening stage out of Bitter Creek on Thursdays." "I'm aware." "I'd not want you to miss it." He left. She got up, closed the door, put her back against it, and stood there for a very long time with her hand pressed flat over her mouth. She was still standing there when she heard boots on the step. "Ma'am." She didn't open the door. Mr. Cole, it's late. Yes, ma'am. What do you want? A pause. To say that a woman who's been threatened generally sits down after, Nathan said through the wood. And you ain't sat down? I can hear that you ain't. Eleanor closed her eyes. How long were you outside? Long enough to hear him mention Helena. You were listening at my door. I was. That's a poor sort of thing to admit. It's a poorer sort of thing to do it and lie about it. She opened the door. He didn't come in. He stayed on the step with his hat in his hands, and that detail, the hat in his hands, out there in the dark, where nobody could see him being polite, did something to her that she resented very much. Say what you came to say, she said. He'll not stop with the talk. I know. He'll go at the thing you can't afford to lose. That's his way. He don't hit a man's jaw, he hits a man's name. Nathan turned the hat brim once. So I come to ask what yours is worth to you. That's an ugly question. It's the only one that matters, ma'am. If your name's worth more than them men's wages, then you'd best take Thursday's stage and I'd not think one word less of you for it. But if it ain't... He stopped. If it ain't, then you'll need somebody standing at the other end, like I said. Eleanor looked at this quiet man in his worn clothes with his hat in his hands, and she said the thing she had not said out loud to anybody in 2 years and 4 months. My husband was a good man and a coward, she said. He knew the mine was failing. He knew it 8 months before it did. He watched 40 families put their savings into it because the company told him to smile and say nothing, and he smiled and he said nothing, and when it fell he couldn't live with what he'd done, so he made it my problem instead. Her voice did not break. She would not permit it. I buried a coward, Mr. Cole. I did not intend to become one. Nathan Cole stood very still. No, ma'am, he said. I don't reckon you did. So don't ask me again whether I'll run. I won't. Good. Mrs. Hayes? What? The floorboard by your stove creaks, Nathan said. Anybody standing outside can hear it move. You'd do better with the one under the window. It's already loose and it sits on a joist. And then he put his hat on and touched the brim and walked off into the dark and left Eleanor Hayes standing in her own doorway with her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her teeth. Because there was no earthly reason for a fence mender to have thought about where a person might hide a book. The creek was where it changed. It happened by accident the first time she'd walked out to get away from the ledgers, and he was down there letting a horse drink, and neither of them said anything for a while, and then he said, that horse there was give up on. By whom? Man before me. Said she was ruined. Was she? She was scared. Nathan ran a hand down the mare's neck. Folks call a thing ruined when what they mean is they ain't got the patience for it. Eleanor sat down on a rock, which was not ladylike, and she found she didn't care. You do that a great deal, she said. Do what? Say something about a horse when you mean something about a person. He almost smiled. It's cheaper than saying it straight. After that, they met there most evenings, and it was never arranged, and both of them pretended it was chance for about 3 weeks. She learned things in pieces. That he'd had a wife. That he'd had a boy. That it had been influenza in a bad winter, and it had taken both of them inside of 9 days, and that he had been 40 miles off and hadn't known till the 11th. I got there, he said, and the neighbor woman had already done everything a person could do. Everything. And I stood in that yard and I couldn't think of one solitary thing to say to her that would have been worth the breath. He looked at the water. So I said, thank you, ma'am. That's what I said. Thank you, ma'am. That was the right thing. It was a small thing. Mr. Cole. Eleanor waited until he looked at her. Most of the true things are small. He was quiet a long while after that. How'd you get so sure of yourself? He asked finally. I'm not sure of myself. I'm sure of numbers. She almost laughed. A number doesn't care who's asking. It doesn't care that I'm a woman or a widow or 30 years old with no prospects and a dead man's debts. It's the only honest thing I ever met. That's a hard way to live. It's a clean way to live. Ain't the same? No, she said. It ain't. And she caught herself using his word, and he caught it too, and neither of them mentioned it. On the 4th of July, there was no celebration at Red Canyon, because Carter said the work wouldn't keep, and that was the day Eleanor found the land transfers. They were in the back of the 1876 ledger, and they were not entries at all. They were copies made in Carter's hand of 4 separate conveyances of water frontage along the North Fork. Small parcels, 40 acres, 60, 32, 90, sold at prices that would have been fair for dry grass and were obscene for water. And every one of them had been sold to the same buyer, the Bitter Creek Land and Cattle Company. And every one of them carried the same authorization above Carter's signature, by power of attorney for the owner. Eleanor read it 4 times. Then she went and found Silas. Who owns Red Canyon? Ma'am. Not who runs it. Who owns it? Silas scratched his neck. Why, there's a name on the paper somewheres, I reckon. Eastern fella, never come out. Have you ever seen him? No, ma'am, nor nobody has not in my time. Then how do you know he's Eastern? Silas opened his mouth, closed it. 'Cause Mr. Carter said so, he said slowly. I reckon that's the whole of how I know it. Eleanor asked Carter directly at supper in front of everyone, because she had decided that the only protection she had left was witnesses. Mr. Carter, who holds the patent on this place? Fork stopped. That's not your affair. It's precisely my affair. I can't reconcile a sale of land without knowing who was empowered to sell it. Carter set down his cup. The owner is a gentleman by the name of Cole. He does not come here. He has not come here in 7 years. A beat. And I am given to understand he is dead. Somebody's chair scraped. Dead, Eleanor repeated. Winter before last. Word came by way of Helena. Then who holds the estate? That, Carter said, is being resolved. These things take years. And in the meantime, you sell his water. The whole table went so quiet she could hear the fire. In the meantime, Carter said very softly, I preserve a property that would otherwise fall to ruin for a man who left no heirs and no instruction. And I would advise you, Mrs. Hayes, to be extremely careful what you say next, because there is a word for what you are suggesting, and it is a word that gets said in a courthouse. Yes, Eleanor said. It is. She did not sleep at all that night, because she was thinking about a scrap of paper she'd found under the seat of the buckboard 2 weeks before and hadn't understood a mail receipt from the Bitter Creek post office signed for and collected by W. Carter for a letter addressed to N. Cole Red Canyon, dated the 9th of June, which meant that whoever Carter had told the men was dead, somebody in Helena was still writing to him, and somebody at Red Canyon was intercepting it. She went out at first light and found Nathan alone at the horse pens, and she was too tired and too frightened to build up to it, so she didn't. Mr. Cole, what's your Christian name? He didn't turn around. You know it. Say it. Nathan. And your father's name. Now he turned. Ma'am, he said, what are you asking me? I'm asking whether it's a common name in this territory. Her voice was not steady. Because there's a dead man on the patent of this ranch named Cole, and there's a letter in Helena addressed to a live man named Cole, and there's a fence mender standing in front of me named Cole, and I have spent 2 years learning what a coincidence costs. Nathan Cole looked at her for a long, long moment, and Eleanor watched a man decide whether to lie. She would remember that afterward, that she got to watch it happen, that she saw the exact second the choice was made, and that she was not able to read which way it had gone until he spoke. Mrs. Hayes, he said, there's near 30 men on this place that can't read what they sign. That isn't an answer. It's the only one I've got that's worth anything today. Nathan, ask me again, he said quietly, when you've got every page of it copied and hid, and not 1 hour before. Because right now, ma'am, the only thing standing between you and Thursday's stage is that he don't yet know how much you've got. He picked up the halter. His hands, she noticed, were not entirely steady either. And I'd not have you spend it on me. Then he walked past her toward the barn and stopped and said one more thing without looking back. The letter come the 9th, he said. "There'll be another by the end of the month. He'll go for that one, too." And Eleanor Hayes stood alone in that yard with the sun coming up behind her, understanding for the first time that the quiet man she had been telling all her secrets to had known about the intercepted mail before she did, and had never once said a word. She did not follow him into the barn that morning. She followed him into it that night. Mr. Cole. Nathan didn't turn. He kept working the saddle soap into the leather, like the leather was the only thing in Montana territory that made sense to him. "Ma'am?" "You knew about the mail." "I did." "How long?" "Since the 12th. "The 12th. Eleanor's voice came out flat. "That's 9 days. "It is. 9 days I've been sitting in that house adding a dead man's columns, and you knew there was a letter come for a Cole that Carter signed for himself, and you said nothing." She waited. He didn't fill it. "Look at me when I say this to you." He set the rag down. He turned. "You let me be the only fool in this valley," she said. "No, ma'am." "Then what did you let me be?" "Safe," Nathan said. "For 9 days. "I did not ask you for that." "No," he said. "You didn't. Then don't hand it to me like a gift." Her hands were fisted at her sides, and she made herself open them one finger at a time, the way she used to before facing her father's creditors. "I have had exactly one thing since Daniel died, Mr. Cole. One. I know what I know. That's it. That's the whole estate. And you have been standing next to me for a month letting me not know something. And I want you to understand what that costs a woman in my position, because I don't believe you do." Something went across his face. "I do," he said. "Then tell me the rest." "I can't." "Can't or won't. Ain't a difference tonight." Eleanor nodded slowly. She was very calm. It was the calm that frightened people who knew her. "All right," she said. "Then we're done talking, you and I." "Mrs. Hayes." "No. You've had your say about what I can afford and what I can't." She was already at the door. "I'll find the rest myself. And when I've got it, Mr. Cole, I won't come ask you whether I'm allowed to have it." She got 9 steps before she heard him. "You'll get hurt," he said. She stopped. She didn't turn. "I've been hurt," Eleanor said. "It's survivable. Being made small isn't." Then she walked out. She did not go to the creek the next evening or the one after or the one after that. Silas told her about it on the 4th night because Silas was 71 years old and had lost the ability to leave a thing alone. "He goes down there anyhow," he said. "Who does?" "Ma'am?" "Silas, I have 400 pages to read." "Every evening," Silas said. "Stands there about a half hour. Don't do nothing. Don't water no horse. Just stands." He shifted the feed sack on his shoulder. "Man his age. Standing in a creek bottom by hisself like a fence post with a hat on. It's pitiful is what it is." "Then somebody ought to tell him to stop." "Somebody ought." Silas agreed and went off whistling, which she thought was an appalling thing for a man of his years to do. She read until 2 in the morning, and she did not go, and she was proud of herself for about a week, and she stayed proud of herself right up until Tom Prather's hand got caught in a gate. It was a bad break. 2 fingers, and the 3rd one worse. Eleanor heard the shouting from inside, and got there in time to see them walking him toward the cookhouse with his arm cradled up against his chest and his face the color of paper. "Get the wagon," she said. "He needs a doctor." "Doctor's in Bitter Creek," somebody said. "That's 5 hours." "Then 5 hours." "Mrs. Hayes." Carter had come out onto the step. He didn't hurry. He never hurried. "The wagon goes Thursday." Eleanor turned around. "That man's hand is broken." "That man was careless with a gate that has hung true for 6 years." Carter came down the step. "Tom, was the gate hung true?" Prather's mouth moved. Nothing came out of it. "Tom." "Yes, sir," Prather said. "So the gate was true, and the man was careless." Carter said it to the yard, not to her. "Now, I'll not have it said that Red Canyon don't look after its people. Cook can splint it, And the wagon goes Thursday, same as it has gone every Thursday I've been foreman, because a wagon that goes when a man hollers is a wagon that goes twice a week and a ranch that goes broke. He could lose the hand. He could. Carter looked at her then. And a hand costs. Doctor in Bitter Creek charges $4 a visit, and he don't work on credit for cow hands. Reckon that'd come out of Tom's wages. A pause. Reckon that'd take Tom a while to work off. And Eleanor understood, standing there with 30 men watching, that she had just been shown something on purpose. That was how it was done. Not a fist. An arithmetic. "I'll pay it," she said. The yard went absolutely still. "Beg pardon? $4. I'll pay the doctor, out of my own wages, and I'll want a receipt for it, and it goes in no book of yours." She held Carter's eyes. "Now get the wagon." Carter smiled. It was the worst thing he could have done, and he knew it was, and he did it anyway. "Well now," he said. "Boys, take a good look. Woman's been here 5 weeks and she's already buying folks." "I'm not buying. $4 for a hand." Carter's voice never lifted. "That's generous. That's real Christian. And when she comes around here in a week or two, asking Tom what he signed for and what he got, why, Tom'll remember who paid the doctor, and Tom will say whatever she wants said. And there ain't a court in this territory that wouldn't call that exactly what it is." Prather said quietly, "Mr. Carter." "Hush, Tom." "I ain't for sale." I said hush. "I ain't for sale," Prather said again, louder, and his voice cracked on it because he was in a great deal of pain. "And I ain't a dog, and that gate ain't hung true since the spring, and every man here knows it." Nobody breathed. Carter looked at him for a long moment. "Get the wagon," he said. "Silas'll drive. Tom, you'll ride in the bed." Then he went inside, and Eleanor stood there feeling the whole yard look at her, and she knew right down in her stomach that she had just won something small and lost something much larger, and that she'd be a long time finding out how much. Nathan Cole hitched the team himself. He didn't speak to her while he did it. When it was done, he came and stood a few feet off with his hat in his hand. "That was brave," he said. "It was stupid. Both generally. He's going to use it. He is. He's going to say I bought them. He will?" Nathan turned the hat once. "And then some fella in a courthouse in Helena is going to ask 31 men whether the widow paid 'em to lie, and them men are going to say no, and one of 'em is going to say she paid $4 for my hand, and I'd have said the same for free. And that'll be worth more than every page you've copied." Eleanor looked at him. "You've thought about a courthouse," she said. "Some. A fence mender." "Ma'am, no?" She held up a hand. "Don't. I'm not doing this with you tonight." She got 2 steps. "Josiah Bell," Nathan said. She stopped so fast she nearly went off her ankle. "What?" "The hand in the 75 ledger. The one that slants left and quits in October." He put his hat on. "Josiah Bell. He kept books here 2 years. You wanted a name. That's the name." "How do you—" "Ask Silas about the store ledger," Nathan said. "Not the wage book, the store." And he walked away, and she wanted very badly to throw something at his back. The ranch store ledger was in the bottom drawer under a stack of tax receipts, and it took her until nearly 3 in the morning to understand what she was looking at, and when she did, she had to put the lamp down because her hands had gone unreliable. Every man on Red Canyon carried a balance. Coffee tobacco boots, a coat, a blanket medicine, a Christmas ham that no man could remember eating. Small figures, honest-looking figures, and every one of them charged at a price nobody had ever been quoted, added up in a hand that never made an error, and carried forward month over month at a rate of interest that appeared exactly nowhere on the page. Tom Prather owed the store $109. Silas owed $140. Amos the cook's boy, 17 years old, owed $31.40, and one line of it read, "Churn replacement, 1.60. And on the page for 1875, in a column that stopped abruptly in October, there was a name, J. Bell. Josiah Bell had earned $65 a month. Josiah Bell had died owing the Red Canyon store $418. Eleanor sat back in her chair. "That isn't possible," she said out loud. Because it wasn't. A man earning $65 a month could not owe $418 at a ranch store unless he was buying pianos and there was not one line in that ledger for anything a man couldn't carry in his two hands. She went through it again slower, and on the third pass she found it, and when she found it, she made a small sound in the back of her throat that surprised her. The interest wasn't on the page. The interest was in the carry. Every month, Carter carried the balance forward, and every month the number he carried forward was larger than the number at the bottom of the column above it. Never by much. $1, $2, $4. Nobody checks the carry. Nobody in the world checks the carry because the carry is the one number that's supposed to already be true. Josiah Bell had checked the carry. Josiah Bell had checked the carry in October of 1875. And then Josiah Bell's handwriting stopped in the middle of a page. Eleanor found Silas at 4:30 in the morning because she could not have waited another hour if her life had depended on it. "Silas, wake up. Silas. Lord God. Josiah Bell." The old man sat on the edge of his bunk in his union suit, and he did not ask how she knew the name, and that told her everything. "Ma'am, it's dark out. Josiah Bell." Silas rubbed his face with both hands. "He was a little fella," he said. "Wore spectacles. Come from Ohio. Talked too much and ate too little." A breath. "Went out to Bitter Creek in October to post some letters and never come back. Never came back. Horse come back." Eleanor stood very still. And they hunted 3 days and found him at the bottom of the cut below the switchback. Him and about 40 foot of shale. And the coroner said the horse spooked and said it was a shame, and said Bell was a town man who had no business on that road, and that was the whole of it. Silas looked up at her. "And Mr. Carter paid for the burying out of his own pocket and said some real fine words over him." "Silas." "Ma'am, don't." "Was there an inquest?" "There was a coroner and a bottle of whiskey." "Who was the coroner?" Silas didn't answer. "Silas, who was the coroner?" "Deputy's brother," Silas said. "Same as he is now." Eleanor sat down on the bunk across from him because her legs had made the decision without her. "There's something else," Silas said. "What?" "You'll not like it. I haven't liked one thing since June." The old man looked at the floor a while. "Them letters he was posting," he said. "Bell told me he was writing to a lawyer. Said he'd found something in the books he couldn't square, and he wasn't going to Mr. Carter with it, he was going over his head." Silas's mouth twisted. "I told him he was a fool. I told him ain't nobody over Mr. Carter's head. And he laughed at me, ma'am. He said, 'Silas, there's a man in this world that owns every acre you're standing on, and one of these days that man's going to want to know what's been done in his name.'" Eleanor could not feel her hands. "And did the lawyer ever answer, 'Not that I know'? How would you know?" Silas looked at her for a long, level moment, and for 1 second the old man was not old at all. "I wouldn't," he said, "'cause Mr. Carter fetches the mail." She was sick behind the cookhouse quietly, and then she washed her face and went and read for 4 more hours, and at noon William Carter knocked on her door for the first time since June. He had a canvas bag with him. He set it on the table and it made a sound that a bag makes when it is full of coin. $200, he said. Eleanor looked at it. "Sit down, Mr. Carter." "I'd rather stand." "Then I'd rather you didn't put money on my table." Carter smiled his church smile. "It's a severance. It's generous. It's 5 months' wages for 6 weeks' work, and there's not a house between here and St. Louis would call that anything but fair. And what does it buy? Thursday's stage. And a woman's good name intact, and a letter of character from me, and a clean parting between 2 professional people who found they did not suit." He tapped the bag once. "And your book." Eleanor's heart went off like a hammer. She kept her face still. "My book." "The one under your floor." Silence. "Mrs. Hayes?" Carter's voice was almost kind. "I have been the foreman of this outfit for 11 years. I know which of my men snores, and which of 'em prays, and which of 'em writes to a girl in Deer Lodge that don't write back. Do you truly imagine I don't know a woman's been sitting up till 2 in the morning with a lamp burning that ain't in the oil accounts? You've been counting my lamp oil." "I count everything," Carter said. "That's the job." Eleanor stood up. "No," she said. "No what?" "No to all of it. No to the bag, no to the letter, no to Thursday." She pushed the canvas across the table toward him with 2 fingers, and it was the coldest, most deliberate thing she had ever done in her life. "And I'll tell you why, so you don't waste another morning. $200 is what a man offers when he thinks a thing costs less than it does. You've priced me like a wage. I'm not a wage, Mr. Carter. I'm a witness." Carter did not move for a moment. Then he picked up the bag. "Josiah Bell said something similar," he said. Eleanor's blood stopped. "What did you say?" "I said," and he was already at the door, already putting his hat on, "that the road out to Bitter Creek is a poor road. Mrs. Hayes and folks ought to be careful on it, and I'd not want you to learn that the hard way." The door shut. She stood there with her hand on the table for a full minute before she trusted herself to move, and when she did, the first thing she did was go to the floorboard under the window and take the book out and put it inside her dress against her ribs, where it stayed for the next 11 days. She waited until Thursday. She waited because she needed the freight wagon, and she needed a reason. And the reason came when the cook's boy, Amos, let slip that the doctor in Bitter Creek would want paying in person for Tom's hand. "I'll go," she said at supper. "You'll not," Carter said. "I'm not a hand, Mr. Carter. I'm engaged by letter, and I'm owed a day. And I'll be settling a debt that you were unwilling to settle in a town where they keep a record of it." She buttered her bread. "You may come along if it troubles you." Carter looked at her a long time. "Silas drives," he said. "Fine. And you'll be back by dark. If the road allows." She was in the wagon at 5 in the morning, and the reins were already in somebody's hands, and the somebody was not Silas. "Get down," she said. "No, ma'am." "Mr. Cole." Silas turned his ankle. Silas did not turn his ankle. "He did about an hour ago," Nathan said. "I heard it turn." Eleanor sat with her back straight and her jaw set for about 6 miles before she said anything at all. "You had no right." "No, ma'am. He told me to be careful on this road. Do you understand what that was?" "I do." "And you thought you'd just—" "I thought—" Nathan said that a man who says a road is dangerous has generally already decided how. That shut her up for 2 more miles. Then, because she was tired, and because it had been 11 days with a book against her ribs, and nobody in the world to tell, she started talking. And once she started, she couldn't stop. She told him about the carry. She told him about the $418. She told him about a man from Ohio with spectacles who talked too much and ate too little, and went out on a road exactly like this one, and never came back. And Nathan Cole drove and listened, and did not once say "there now," or "don't fret," or any of the words men use to make a woman smaller. When she finished, he was quiet a while. 40 foot of shale, he said. "Yes." "Below the switchback." "Yes." "That's a hard place to spook a horse," Nathan said. "Road widens there. It's the one place on that whole grade a man could stop and eat his dinner without worrying." Eleanor turned her head. "How do you know that?" And Nathan Cole said nothing and kept driving, and she watched the side of his face and thought, he's been out there. He's stood in that cut. He's measured it. "Mr. Cole?" "Ma'am?" "When did you come to Red Canyon?" "April." "What day in April?" "Ma'am?" "What day?" "The 9th, he said. Eleanor sat back. That's a peculiar thing to remember to the day, she said, for a man who drifted in looking for work. He didn't answer that either. The post office in Bitter Creek was a corner of the Mercantile, and the clerk was a young man named Hollis, with an unfortunate mustache and the general demeanor of a rabbit. "Ma'am, I'd like to ask about a piece of mail. Yours. Addressed to Red Canyon." Hollis's face did something. "We don't discuss other folks' mail. I'm the bookkeeper at Red Canyon. Ma'am, I know who you are." He lowered his voice without seeming to know he'd done it. "Everybody in this town knows who you are, and I'd take it kindly if you'd buy some thread and go on." Eleanor put both hands on the counter. "Mr. Hollis, there is a letter that came on the 9th of June addressed to N.O. Cole at Red Canyon. It was signed for by W. Carter. I'd like to know whether that has happened before." "I can't—" "Has it happened before?" "Ma'am, has it happened before?" "Every time," Hollis said, and then went white and looked at the door and said it again much quieter. "Every time. 4 years. Every letter that come from Helena for a coal that man signed for and carried off, and he's got a paper says he's authorized, and I ain't a lawyer, and I ain't got a brother in the sheriff's office, and I ain't going to end up like the little fella with the spectacles." The room got very quiet. "Josiah Bell," Eleanor said. "He asked the same question," Hollis said. "In October, standing right about where you're standing." Eleanor didn't move. "Is there a letter now?" Hollis's throat worked. "Come in Tuesday," he said. "Merrick and Sons Attorneys Helena, addressed to N. Cole, Red Canyon. Third one since April. And it's setting in that box right there. And it don't come out for anybody but a Cole or a man with a paper, and Mr. Carter's due in on Thursday next, and Tuesday to Thursday is a long damn time to be a coward in." And that was when Nathan Cole stepped up to the counter. Eleanor had honestly forgotten he was in the room. "I'll take it," he said. Hollis blinked. "Sir, the letter. I'll take it." "You can't. I'm a Cole." Hollis laughed. It came out wrong. "Mr. Half this territory's a Nathan Cole," Nathan said. "Same as it's wrote on the envelope. You want me to sign it? I'll sign it. You want me to spell it? I'll spell it. You want to send to Helena and ask Merrick whether Nathan Cole is a real man and where he's living at, you go on and send, and I'll wait right here for the answer, and I'd take it as a favor if you did." Nobody said anything. Then Hollis turned around and got the letter out of the box and put it on the counter and slid the book over, and Nathan Cole picked up the pen and signed his name, and Eleanor Hayes stood 18 inches away and watched him do it. She watched the whole name. She watched the clerk read it and look up and go a shade paler than he had been. "Sir," Hollis said, "that name's on the county book." "I know it is." "That name's on the patent for the whole North Fork." "I know that too." And then Nathan picked up the letter and did not open it and held it out to her. "You hold it," he said. Eleanor did not take it. "No," she said. "Ma'am, no. You don't get to do that." Her voice was shaking now, and she did not care who heard it. "You do not get to hand me a thing like that in a public store in front of a clerk and call it trust. Trust is what you do in June, Mr. Cole. In August, it's just a receipt." She walked out. She walked out, and she made it 4 doors down the street before she had to stop and put her hand against a wall, and she stood there with her eyes shut and her heart going like a bird in a jar, doing what she always did, what she had done since she was 15 years old, behind her father's counter adding, "April 9th. He came in April 9th. Bell died in October. The lawyer's been writing since April. 3 letters. Carter took 2. He's been here 4 months, sleeping in a bunkhouse, eating out of a tin, and letting Carter call him a drifter to his face. Why?" And then right behind it, in a voice she despised, "And he let you tell him everything." She did not go back to the wagon. She went to the county recorder's office, and she spent 2 hours and $1.60 of her own money, and what she found there rearranged the world. The Bitter Creek Land and Cattle Company had been incorporated in 1874. It held 4 parcels of water frontage on the North Fork of the river, purchased from Red Canyon Ranch by power of attorney between 1875 and 1878. and its registered agent on file, signed and sealed, and sitting there in a bound book that any citizen of the territory could ask for on a Thursday afternoon, was William H. Carter. He had sold the ranch's water to himself for $1,160 total on land that carried the only reliable summer water for 9 miles in any direction, which meant that whatever happened to Red Canyon, whoever owned the grass, whoever won the courthouse, whoever lived and whoever died, William Carter owned the thing the grass could not live without. Eleanor read it 3 times. Then she asked the recorder very politely whether anyone else had asked to see that book. "Not lately," he said. "How lately is lately?" He turned back a page in his own register. "April," he said. "Fella come in the 2nd week of April. Asked for the same book, sat right where you're sitting, read it about an hour." "Did he give a name?" "He did." "Would you read it to me?" The recorder squinted. "N. Cole," he said. Eleanor got up and walked out into the street and stood there in the middle of the afternoon with her hands hanging at her sides and the whole shape of the last 3 months turned over in her head like a wagon going off a grade. He hadn't drifted in. He had come. Deliberately. In April. After reading the county book. After learning what Carter had done. And then he had gone and gotten himself hired as a hand at $26 a month to mend fence in the heat beside men who thought he was nothing. And he had stood in that yard for 4 months and said nothing, while Carter shorted their wages and said nothing, while a boy got charged $1.60 for a churn and said nothing, while she read 400 pages by lamplight and got herself threatened twice. She thought, I don't know if that's the bravest thing I ever heard of, or the coldest. She was still standing there when he came up behind her. "Mrs. Hayes, don't. You've been in the recorders." "I said don't." "Ask me," Nathan said. She turned around, and she looked at him, really looked the way she had not permitted herself since that first evening at the corral, and she saw a man who had not slept properly in months, and whose hands were wrecked from work he did not have to do, and who was standing in the street of a town where a clerk had just gone white at his name, waiting to be asked a question he had been running from since April. "No," she said. "Ma'am, I'm not going to ask you here." Her voice was perfectly steady, which surprised her. "You'll tell me at Red Canyon, in front of Silas and Tom Prather and Amos and every man who signs his wages with a cross. Because whatever the answer is, Mr. Cole, it isn't mine. It never was mine. It belongs to them." Nathan Cole stood there a long moment. "That's a hard thing," he said. "Most of the true things are." And he took his hat off right there in the street in front of God and the mercantile and 2 women loading a buckboard, and he said, "Yes, ma'am." And that was all, and it undid her more than anything he had ever said. They didn't speak on the road home. He stopped the wagon once at the switchback without her asking, and they both looked down into the cut, where 40 feet of shale had killed a man from Ohio who talked too much and ate too little, and then he clucked to the team, and they went on. It was full dark when they came into the yard, and there were 4 horses at the rail that did not belong to Red Canyon. "That's the deputy's gray," Nathan said. Eleanor's hand went flat against her ribs where the book was. Carter came out onto the step with a lamp and a face full of terrible sorrow. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, "I am obliged to inform you that the strong box in my office was opened this afternoon, and $140 has gone out of it, and I am obliged to further inform you that Deputy Rowe has come out to search the premises. And I did tell him plain Rowe, you'll bear me out that I could not credit it of you." "You're a liar," Eleanor said. "Search her house," said Rowe. They tore it apart. She stood in the yard with 31 men watching, and she did not say one word while they did it, and she kept her arms folded across her middle the entire time, and the book stayed exactly where it was. They found nothing. "Well," said Rowe at last from the doorway, sounding personally aggrieved, "there's nothing." Carter's jaw moved. "Then I am glad of it," he said, "and I apologize to the lady and Rowe. You'll take a cup of coffee before you ride." And that should have been the end of it. That should have been the one clean victory of the whole miserable summer. But when they had all gone in, and the yard had emptied, and Eleanor finally went into her wrecked little house and shut the door and got down on her knees to see how much they'd broken, she saw that the floorboard under the window was sitting crooked, not pried, not splintered, lifted and set back down by somebody who knew how it came up. She got her fingers under it. The cavity was empty. Every page she had copied since the second week of June, the wage figures, the carry the store, balances 31 names of men who had begged her not to write their names down. She had taken with her that morning, all of it against her ribs. All of it except one thing, the oldest one. The first thing she'd ever hidden there, back when she still thought this was a job about arithmetic. 4 sheets in her own hand copied out of the 1876 ledger on the 4th of July. The land transfers. The 4 sales to the Bitter Creek Land and Cattle Company, with the prices and the acreage and the dates and the words by power of attorney for the owner, and Carter's signature copied stroke for stroke beneath everyone. Gone. And there was exactly one man on Red Canyon Ranch who had ever known that board was loose. She did not knock. She crossed that yard with the lamp swinging in her hand and went into the bunkhouse where 22 men were pulling their boots off, and she did not care one bit about any of them. Nathan Cole. He was sitting on the edge of his bunk. He stood up. "Ma'am, where is it?" The whole room went still. Somebody's boot hit the floor and nobody picked it up. "Mrs. Hayes, where is it?" "Come outside." "No." She had never in her life raised her voice to a man in a room full of men, and she found that once you did it, there was nothing to it at all. "You've had all summer to say a thing outside. Say it in here." Nathan looked at her. "I've got it," he said. Eleanor had known. She had known since her fingers came up out of that cavity with nothing in them. But knowing a thing and hearing a man say it out loud are 2 different animals, and the second one has teeth. "Say the rest." "I took the 4 sheets out from under that board this morning before light. Then I went and hitched the team and drove you to Bitter Creek." He said it flat the way a man reads a bill. "I've had 'em on me all day. They're on me now." "On you?" "Yes, ma'am." "While I sat next to you for 5 hours." "Yes, ma'am." "While I told you about Josiah Bell." Her voice cracked and she hated it. "While I told you about the carry and the $418 and that boy's churn, you had my papers inside your coat and you let me talk." "I did." "Say why." "Roe was coming." "You didn't know that." "I knew it Tuesday," Nathan said. The room made a sound. Not a word, a sort of collective intake. 22 men understanding at once that something had been happening over their heads for a long time. Eleanor set the lamp down on the table because her hand had begun to shake and she would not have it seen. "Explain that to me." "Carter sent Amos into Bitter Creek Tuesday with a note for the deputy. Boy can't read. I can." Nathan's jaw worked once. It said, "Come Thursday evening, bring a warrant, there's been a theft. Written Tuesday." Written Tuesday, 2 days before the money went missing out of his box. He let that sit. "Ma'am, there wasn't ever no $140 took. There was $140 moved from one drawer to another so a deputy could come out here and turn your house over and find them 4 sheets in your own hand with his signature copied on them, and then it wouldn't have been Carter that forged a land sale. It'd have been you." "Then you tell me on Tuesday," Eleanor said. "You come to my door Tuesday night, and you say, 'Mrs. Hayes, there's a deputy coming Thursday,' and you and I decide together what's to be done with them papers. That's what a partner does. That's the whole of what a partner does." You'd have said no. That was mine to say. She was shouting. She had never shouted. Tom Prather was sitting 3 bunks down with his splinted hand in his lap, and he was looking at the floor like a man at a funeral. "You have done this to me twice now," Eleanor said. "Twice. You knew about the mail on the 12th and you kept it 9 days to keep me safe. You knew about a deputy on Tuesday and you kept it 2 days to keep me safe. And every time you keep a thing from me to keep me safe, Mr. Cole, you make me exactly what Carter says I am, a woman who don't know what's in her own house." Nathan said nothing. "Give them to me," He reached inside his coat and took out 4 folded sheets and held them out, and she took them, and her hands were steady enough by then, which she counted as a mercy. "There's a thing you ought to know before you go out that door," he said. "There's about 40. He's got Merrick's letter now." Eleanor stopped. "No," she said. "You took the letter. In the store. You signed for it, and you put it in your—" "He come to me an hour after we got in," Nathan said, "while Roe was in your house. Come out to the horse pens where I was rubbing the team down, and he stood there with his hands behind his back like a man watching a sunset, and he said, 'Nathan, there's a letter come out of Helena today, and a man signed for it that ain't authorized. And I've a mind to send word to Merrick and Sons about it unless that letter was to find its way onto my desk.' And you gave it to him." "I gave it to him." Eleanor put her hand flat on the table. "Why?" "Because he'd have wrote to Merrick," Nathan said. "And Merrick would have wrote back asking what in God's name a Cole was doing at Red Canyon signing for mail, and that would have put a lawyer's letter in Carter's hands with my name in it 2 weeks before I'm ready." "Ready for what, ma'am?" "Ready for what, Mr. Cole?" And Silas said from the end of the room in a voice like a hinge, "Boy, what'd he mean, a Cole?" Nobody had noticed him sitting there. "Silas," Nathan said. "Don't you Silas me. I've knowed you since April." The old man got to his feet, and it took him a while. "That clerk in the store, Hollis, he's my sister's boy's cousin by marriage, and he come out to the wagon this evening while she was in the recorders, and he says to me, 'Silas, who is that fella you brought in here?' And I says he's a hand. And he says, 'No, he ain't.'" Silas's mouth was trembling. "He says that name's on the county book." 22 men were looking at Nathan Cole. "Say it plain," Silas said. "Right here in the dark in front of all of us. Whose land are we standing on?" Nathan Cole did not answer for a long moment. Then he said, "Mine." Nobody moved. "Say it again," said Tom Prather. "It's mine. Patented in 71, 16,000 acres and the water on the North Fork." He said it without any weight on it at all, which somehow made it worse. "My name's on it. Nobody else has ever been." Prather stood up. 4 months, he said. "Tom, 4 months you laid in that bunk." Prather's voice was climbing. "You ate out of the same tin. You took the roan nobody'd take. You let Carter call you a drifter to your face in front of 31 men, and you said yes, sir." "I did." "I got my hand tore off in a gate and you hitched the wagon." "I did." "You could have said one word." "I could have." "Then why didn't you?" Prather came down the aisle with his splint held up in front of him like a fist he couldn't make. "You stood there. You stood right there while that man told me the gate hung true and made me say it back to him in front of everybody. Do you know what that is? Do you know what it is to say yes, sir, to a lie about your own hand?" "Yes," Nathan said. "You don't." "I know what it is to hold my tongue and hate myself for it," Nathan said. "I've had 4 months of it, and I'd not wish it on a dog." "Then why?" And Nathan Cole said, "Because I signed the paper that let him do it." The room stopped. Eleanor turned around slowly. "What paper?" she said. "Power of attorney." Nathan's hands hung at his sides. "September 18 and 74. Signed in a lawyer's office in Helena in front of 2 witnesses by my own hand, and I never read it. I never read one line of it." He looked up. "Ma'am, you asked me back in June why I'd sit here and watch it. That's why. Every dollar that man took out of Tom Prather's wages, he took with my signature." "That's not—" "It is. That is not the same thing. It ain't a bit different to Tom's hand," Nathan said. Silas sat back down heavily. "Why'd you sign it?" Eleanor said. And Nathan Cole told them standing in a bunkhouse at 11 o'clock at night with his hat in his hands because there was no longer one single reason on this earth not to. "My wife's name was Ruth. My boy was 6. Name of Samuel." He stopped, started again. It was the influenza in the winter of '74, and I was 40 miles off buying bulls, and I didn't know till the 11th day. I come home and it was done, and the neighbor woman had already buried 'em both because you can't keep a body in a house that long. He turned the hat once in his hands, and I stayed in that house 9 days, and I couldn't eat, and I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't look out a window without seeing that boy on a fence rail. So in September, I rode to Helena, and I found a lawyer, and I said, I want a man to run it. Any man. Find me a man. And he found me William Carter, who had 11 years with the Territorial Cattle Association and letters from 3 banks, and he put a paper in front of me, and I signed it. Without reading it. Ma'am, I couldn't have read the Lord's Prayer that autumn. And then I went to Texas, Nathan said, and I broke horses for 4 years under a name that wasn't mine for $18 a month, and I let a stranger have my whole life because I didn't want it. Nobody said anything. The money come every quarter, he said. Bank draft. Regular as church. I never once looked at the figure. Not one time in 4 years. His voice was very quiet now. In March, I got a letter from Merrick and Sons in Helena. First one that ever found me. Fella name of Josiah Bell had wrote to him in October of '75 about irregularities at Red Canyon, and they'd tried 3 years to run down an owner and couldn't, and then Bell died, and it went in a drawer, and this spring a young clerk was cleaning out drawers. March, Eleanor said. March. And you came in April. 2nd week. Read the county book in Bitter Creek. Saw what he'd sold and who he'd sold it to. Nathan's mouth pulled thin. Then I rode out here to fire him. You didn't fire him. No, ma'am. Why not? Because I got here, and I sat on that ridge 2 days, and I watched, Nathan said, and I seen a boy of 17 carry a sack for a man twice his size and say thank you for it. And I understood that if I rode down there and pulled a paper out of my coat, Carter would be gone inside a week with every book on this place in his saddlebags, and there'd be nothing left to prove but my word against a man with 11 years of letters from 3 banks. And them men would go on owing a store that never existed to a company that don't run cattle. So you got hired. So I got hired. By him. By him, Nathan said. He looked at my hands and asked, could I mend wire? And I said yes, and he wrote me down for $26 a month and never asked my name twice. Eleanor stood there with 4 sheets of paper in her hand. That's a fine story, she said. It's the true one. It's still a story where you're the only one who knows anything. She was looking at him, and she could not make herself stop. You had a lawyer in Helena in March. You had the county book in April. You could have gone to a judge. With what? With your name. Ma'am, my name is on a paper that give that man leave to sell my land, Nathan said. You've read the transfers. You tell me what a judge sees. He sees a fella that hands a stranger his whole outfit, don't read the paper, don't look at a figure for 4 years, don't answer a letter, and then turns up in the 5th year hollering theft when the price of water goes up. He shook his head once. There's no judge in this territory would give me that. Not without a book, not without men. And Eleanor's stomachs turned over because she had heard it the thing under the words, and she knew what it was before she knew it. Not without a book, she said. Ma'am? Not without a bookkeeper. Nathan Cole did not answer her. Look at me. He looked at her. That letter, Eleanor said, the one that come to Kansas in April, $40 a month with board, addressed to E. Hayes, signed in a hand that Mr. Carter did not recognize when I put it in front of him on my first morning at this place, and I watched him not recognize it, and I have wondered about it every night since, and told myself it was nothing. The bunkhouse was so quiet she could hear the lamp. Who wrote that letter? Mrs. Hayes. Who wrote it? I did, Nathan said. Eleanor did not move. Say the whole of it, she said. You've come this far. Don't you dare stop where it's comfortable. There ain't a comfortable place left in it. Then say it. Merrick's clerk found Bell's letters in March. He found something else too. Nathan's voice had gone rough. There was a piece in a Kansas paper, 1876. Consolidated Fairview Mining. 41 families lost their savings, and a company bookkeeper hanged himself in a stable, and his widow stood up in a hearing room in Wichita with his ledgers under her arm and testified against the men he'd worked for 2 days. Alone. Eleanor's ears had begun to ring. They printed her name, she said. They printed her name. And you kept it. I kept it 4 weeks, Nathan said. I sat with it 4 weeks before I wrote. And then you wrote to a widow in Kansas, Eleanor said. And you offered her $40 a month, and you did not sign your own name to it, and you sent her out here into a house full of men who could not read to sit across a table from William Carter, so that when he came for her, ma'am, so that when he came for her, there'd be a record of it. That ain't... Don't. Her voice came out of her like something with a blade on it. Don't tell me it ain't. I priced myself for that man on my own table. I told him I'm not a wage, I'm a witness. And I was so proud of myself when I said it. She laughed once, and it was a terrible sound. I was bait, Mr. Cole. You baited a hook with a widow. No. Then what? I hired the only person in the United States I could find, Nathan said, that had already done the hardest thing there is to do, and done it alone. I didn't send you in blind. I come here in April and got myself hired 6 weeks ahead of you, so there'd be somebody standing at the other end when you got here. His hands had come up, and he put them down again. I have not slept a whole night since you stepped off that wagon. When he come to your door on the 14th of June, I was under that window, with my hands on the sill. And if he'd have laid one finger on you, this whole thing would have ended right there in the dirt, and every man in this room would still be owing that store. You should have told me. I know it. Not in August. In April. I know it. You'd have written the same letter anyway. Yes, Nathan said. God help me, ma'am, I would. And that, not the land, not the name, not 4 months of lying in a bunk, that was the thing that broke her. Because he had not tried to make it prettier. He had stood there and told her that if he had the whole summer to live over, he'd do it again. And there is no answer to a man who won't even give you the courtesy of a false apology. Eleanor put the 4 sheets inside her dress. Mr. Prather, she said. Prather looked up. Ma'am. How much does the store say you owe? 109. You owe nothing. There's no interest wrote on any page of that book, and there's no rate ever quoted to you, and half them prices ain't the prices in Bitter Creek. Silas, you owe nothing. Amos, you owe nothing, and the churn was $1.60, and it's forgiven. And I'd like the whole of this room to hear me say that a boy of 17 was made to stand up in front of 30 men and be told his daddy was honest right up till the end, and that was done on purpose, and it was done to hold you. Nobody spoke. I have the wage figures for 31 men going back 3 years, she said, in my own hand with the dates, and what was signed for, and what was got, and the names of the men who told me, and every one of you asked me not to write your name down. She looked around that room. I wrote them down, she said. Every one. Because a thing without a name is a rumor, and a thing with 31 names is a case. And come the day it's read out loud in a courthouse, every man here is going to have to stand up and say, yes, that's mine, that's true, that's what he done to me in front of a judge and a clerk and whoever else is in the room. They'll turn us off, somebody said from the back. They may. Where's a man go in August with no character? I don't know. That's real fine comfort, ma'am. I haven't got any comfort, Eleanor said. I've got a book. That's all I've ever had, and it's what I brought. She got to the door and Silas said, Mrs. Hayes. What? The old man was looking at Nathan, not at her. Is he still the owner? Silas said. Or did he sign that away too? And that was the question, and every man in that room knew it was the question, and Eleanor watched Nathan Cole take it, standing up. I don't know, he said. Carter came to the small house at 6 the next morning, and for the first time in 3 months, he did not smile. You'll want to sit down for this. I'll stand. Suit yourself. He laid an envelope on her table. Merrick and Sons Attorneys at Law Helena, Montana Territory. Opened. Read it. You've read my mail before. I'd not give you the pleasure. It's not your mail. It's his. Carter pulled out a chair and sat in it, uninvited, which he had never once done. And I'd like you to read it because I'd like you to understand where you're standing before you spend another $1.60 in the recorder's office." Eleanor read it. It took her about 40 seconds, and it took the floor out from under her. Merrick and Sons wrote to inform their client that they had examined the instrument executed on the 14th of September, 1874, and were obliged to advise him that the power of attorney conferred upon William H. Carter was general in its terms, was properly witnessed, was duly recorded, and had never been revoked. That upon its face, it granted authority to sell, lease, convey, and encumber the whole or any part of the property. And that a suit to void the conveyances already made would rest not upon the instrument which was sound, but upon proof of fraud by clear and convincing evidence which the firm did not presently possess. They further advised their client that they had on the 11th of July received notice of an instrument executed by Mr. Carter as attorney in fact, conveying the remainder of the Red Canyon holdings to the Bitter Creek Land and Cattle Company for the sum of $9,000, said conveyance to be recorded upon the first day of September. Eleanor read that paragraph 3 times. $9,000, she said. Fair market. For 16,000 acres. For 16,000 acres of dry grass, Carter said, with no water on it, which I know for a fact because I bought the water in '75 and there ain't a soul alive who can tell me I paid $1 under what it was worth at the time. You sold it to yourself. I sold it to a company. Whose registered agent? Is me. It's on file. Public record. Any citizen may ask. Carter spread his hands. That's the beauty of it, Mrs. Hayes, and I want you to appreciate it, because you're the only person within 100 miles capable of appreciating it. I never hid a thing. Not one line. Everything I have done in 5 years is written down in a book in Bitter Creek that anybody could have read on any Thursday afternoon of their life. He leaned back. Nobody read it. That's not fraud. That's the world. The $8 off Tom Prather's wages is fraud. Prove the $8. I intend to. With 31 crosses in a wage book. Carter almost laughed. Ma'am, I'll put every one of those men on a stand and I'll ask them one question: did you sign it? And every one of them will say yes, sir, and I will sit down. They'll say what was done to them. They'll say what they can afford to say. Eleanor put the letter down. The 1st of September, she said. 9 days. And then Red Canyon belongs to Bitter Creek Land and Cattle, and the grass and the water sit in one hand for the first time since '71, and there'll be a proper outfit run out of here with 100 men in it, and none of them will be able to read either, and I'll be a rich man, and Nathan Cole will have $9,000 in a bank in Helena that he never asked for and never wanted. Carter stood. Which he'll take, by the way. He'll take it. Men always take it. He won't. He signed the paper, Mrs. Hayes. Whatever he's told you in a bunkhouse in the dark, he signed the paper and he took the drafts for 4 years, and he never once wrote and asked what was in them. Carter picked up his hat. There's a name for a man who hands his people to a stranger and rides to Texas. I'll not say it in front of a lady. But you might ask yourself, which one of us truly turned Tom Prather's wages down, the man who did it, or the man who was 3 days' ride away with his eyes shut and his hand out? Eleanor said nothing. Because there was nothing to say, because it was true, and because Nathan Cole had said it about himself first and said it worse. He wrote the letter that brought you here, Carter said from the door. Her head came up. How do you know that? Because I've had the same suspicion since the morning you handed me a hiring letter I never wrote, and I have spent 11 weeks deciding what it meant. He put his hat on. And now that I know, I'd like you to consider your position honestly. You have been used, ma'am, not by me. I never told you one lie that wasn't in a column. That man lied to your face for 3 months with his hat in his hands. Get out of my house. $200 is still on the table. Get out. 300, said Carter, and a letter of character and a seat on Thursday's stage, and I'll pay Prather's doctor myself and never charge it back. And that is a better offer than any court in Montana will make you in 5 years of trying. He waited. You've got till the 1st. He left the door open behind him, which he did on purpose, so that she would have to get up and close it herself. She did not go looking for Nathan. He came to her at midday, and he did not knock either, but he stopped in the doorway and stayed there. "He's got a sale," Nathan said. "The 1st of September. 9,000. "Yes." "You've seen the letter." He put it on my table like a man laying down a winning hand. She did not turn around. "Merrick says your paper's sound. Merrick says you'd need clear and convincing proof of fraud, and they haven't got it." "I know what Merrick says." "How he's had it since—" "Because it's the same thing they wrote me in April," Nathan said, "and the same thing I've known since April, and it's why I got hired instead of firing him, and it's why I wrote to Kansas." Eleanor turned around then. "You've known since April that your own lawyer says you'll lose." "Yes, ma'am." "And you let me spend 3 months." "I let you build the only thing that wins it," Nathan said. "Merrick don't need the paper. Merrick needs the carry." She stared at him. "There ain't a court in this territory that'll say a man can't sell what he was give leave to sell," he said. "But there ain't a court on God's earth that'll let a man hold a power of attorney after it's proved he was stealing wages out of the pockets of the men he was hired to pay. That's not a land case, ma'am. That's not about deeds. It's about a store ledger where the carry don't match the column 31 times a month 5 years running in one man's hand. That's what you wanted from the beginning." "That's what I couldn't get," Nathan said. "I can read. I can't read a book that ain't in my hands, and he'd have burned the whole lot the day a hired man asked for it. It had to be somebody he'd hand them to himself." He looked at her. "He handed you the wage book on your second morning without blinking. Do you recall it?" "I recall being frightened by it. You ought to have been." "He handed it over because in 11 years no soul had ever come out here that could take it apart." Nathan's voice went low. "And then you found the carry in 4 hours." 4 days. 4 hours on the freight bills. 4 days on the carry. I've watched every lamp you've burned this summer." He took his hat off. "Mrs. Hayes, I've done you a wrong I can't undo, and I'll not stand here and argue for myself. But I'd not have you think you were a hook with a worm on it. You were the only weapon in the world that could kill him, and I was fool enough and desperate enough to go and get it. And I did not tell you what you were because I was afraid you'd say no. I wouldn't have said no." Nathan went very still. "Ma'am, I said I wouldn't have said no." Eleanor's eyes were streaming, and her voice was flat as slate. "That's what I've been sitting here with since 11 o'clock last night. If you had written the truth in that letter, if you'd said my name is Nathan Cole, I own 16,000 acres. I signed my people away to a thief, and I haven't the courage to face what I did. Will you come and count it for me? I would have got on the train the same week." She wiped her face with the back of her wrist once angrily. "You didn't take my choice because you needed to. You took it because you couldn't stand to ask." Nathan Cole opened his mouth and closed it. "That's so," he said. "I know it's so. I'd not have known how to write that letter." "No," she said. "You'd have had to be worth what those men think you are." He took that one all the way down. "What do you want me to do?" he said. 9 days. 9 days. Then I want the store ledger and the wage book and the 75 ledger with Josiah Bell's hand in it in Helena in front of Merrick before the 1st of September. She said it like a woman reading a list. "I want a deposition from Hollis at the post office about 4 years of intercepted mail. I want the recorder's own book to show that a registered agent bought water from himself by power of attorney. And I want at least 6 of those 31 men to stand up and say it out loud with their names attached, because 31 crosses is nothing and 6 voices is a hanging. He'll not let 1 page off this place. No. And them books live in his office. They do. And he'll have Roe out here inside a day of missing 'em. He will." Nathan looked at her for a long moment. "Then you're talking about theft," he said. "I'm talking about a man taking his own property out of his own office." Eleanor said, "Which is a thing you have not done for 4 years because you were ashamed, and which you are going to do now because those men cannot afford 1 more day of your shame." Nobody said anything for a while. "There's a thing I ought to say," Nathan said at last. "There's always a thing. When this is done, however it lands, and it may land bad, I'd like leave to say something to you that ain't about a ledger." Eleanor's chest went tight in a way she resented with her whole heart. "You've no right to that," she said. "No, ma'am, I know it. You lied to me every evening for 3 months at that creek." "I never lied at that creek." He said it quickly, and it was the first thing all summer he had said fast. Not one word, not about Ruth, nor Samuel, nor the neighbor woman, nor the horse that was give up on. "Everything I withheld from you, ma'am, I withheld. But there ain't a single thing I told you down there that wasn't true, and if you take nothing else out of this house, I'd have you take that." Eleanor turned away from him because she could not do it and look at him at the same time. "Go find Silas," she said. "Get me 6 men who'll stand up, not 7. 6 is enough, and 7 is one more mouth. And you, I'm going to do something you're not going to like." "Ma'am, that's the general shape of it, isn't it?" Eleanor said. "You'll find it's not a pleasant feeling." She waited until 3 o'clock when the yard was empty and the men were out at the north pens, and then she crossed to the main house and stood at William Carter's door and knocked twice. He opened it himself. She could see past his shoulder the desk, the strong box. 3 ledgers stacked at the corner, squared up the way he squared everything. "Mrs. Hayes." "Mr. Carter." "To what do I owe?" "You said $300, Eleanor said. And William Carter smiled, the way a man smiles when the world has finally confirmed what he has always believed about it, and he stepped back from the door and said, "Come in." He shut the door behind her, and Eleanor Hayes sat down in the chair he pulled out, and she put her hands in her lap where he could see them. "$300, she said. $300. In coin, not a draft. Coin's heavy on a stage. I've carried worse." Carter went around the desk and sat. He didn't reach for the box. He was not a man who paid before he'd been paid. "You'll forgive me," he said. "You told me 2 mornings ago that you were a witness and not a wage." "I did. And now?" "Now I've read a letter from a firm of attorneys in Helena," Eleanor said, "in which my employer's own lawyers advise him that his paper is sound, his signature is good, and there is no evidence on this earth to unmake it. That's a great deal of arithmetic in one page, Mr. Carter. I've spent my life respecting arithmetic." Carter watched her. "You're taking it too easy," he said. "I've been threatened on a road searched by a deputy in front of 30 men and lied to for 3 months by a man I'd begun to think well of. I'm not taking anything easy. I'm taking it accurately." She let that sit. "There's a difference, and you know it better than anybody here." Something in his face loosened by about a hair. "Yes," he said. "I do." "Then we can talk." "Talk." "I'll want a receipt for the $300 written and signed that says it's severance and not a purchase." "Naturally." "And I'll want my letter of character." "You'll have it tonight." "And there's a third thing," Eleanor said, "which is the only one that matters, and I'd have you hear it before you get pleased with yourself." Carter's hands went still on the desk. "Go on." "I will not leave a set of books unsigned." He didn't answer. "You engaged a bookkeeper by letter," she said. "Whoever wrote that letter, and we both know now it wasn't you. The fact stands that I've been at Red Canyon 11 weeks examining at the foreman's own hand. If I get on a stage Thursday with no certificate behind me, then what I am. Mr. Carter is a woman who was brought out here to check your figures and left in the night with $300 in her bag. There isn't a house between here and St. Louis that would hire me after that. My name would be worth exactly what your letter says it's worth, which is nothing, because a character from a foreman is a character from a man with an interest. She let him get there. He got there fast. He always did. And if it were signed," Carter said slowly, "then it's finished." "Say it plain." "A certificate of examination," Eleanor said. "In my hand, signed and dated, stating that I have examined the books of Red Canyon Ranch for the period 1873 through the present and find them a true and correct record of the business of the ranch. That's a professional instrument, Mr. Carter. It follows the books forever. Any man who buys this place, any bank that lends against it, Any court that ever wonders about a conveyance made by power of attorney. She lifted one shoulder, looks at it, and stops looking. The room was very quiet. "That is worth considerably more than $300, Carter said. "I know exactly what it's worth. That's why I'm offering it instead of asking for it." He got up. He walked to the window and stood with his back to her, and Eleanor made herself breathe slow and count the ledgers on the corner of the desk. 3, squared up, wage book on top. "You understand what you'd be signing," he said. "I understand what I'd be signing. That you'd be closing a door on yourself. Should you ever change your mind, should you ever find yourself in a hearing room in Wichita again with a bundle under your arm?" Her chin came up. "So he told you that too?" Carter said without turning. "No, I read it in March same as he did. Your husband hanged himself in a stable, and 41 families lost everything, and a woman went in and testified for 2 days by herself." He turned around. "I have thought about that woman since the day you stepped off that wagon, and I have never once been able to make her fit in the same room with a woman who'd take $300. Eleanor did not blink. "Then let me help you," she said. "That woman testified because there was nobody else to do it, and nobody paid her a nickel, and she has been poor ever since. She is 30 years old, and there is no man coming, and no money coming, and no house of her own on the face of the earth. She has done the noble thing once, Mr. Carter, and she has eaten it every day for 2 years, and this summer a man wrote her a lying letter and dragged her out here to do it again for free." Her voice went to nothing. "Ask me again whether she'd take $300. Carter looked at her for a long, long moment. "How long would you want the books?" he said. 2 days. 1. 2. There's 5 years and 31 men, and I don't put my name on anything I haven't run twice. They don't leave this office." "Then I don't sign," Eleanor said. "I've a table and a lamp, and I've worked at them since June. I'll not sit under your eye and be handed pages like a schoolgirl. That's not an examination, that's a recitation, and any lawyer alive would say so." Carter's jaw moved. 2 days, he said. 2 days. He picked up the wage book and the store ledger, and he set them into her arms himself, and Eleanor Hayes took them without one flicker showing, and she thought he handed them to me. He handed them to me on his own 2 hands in his own office, and there isn't a court in Montana that can call it theft. Then Carter put his palm flat on the 3rd one and left it where it was. "That one stays. 75's in that volume. 75 is closed." "Mr. Carter, I can't certify a period I haven't." "Certify 76 forward," he said, "and I'll pay you $350. And Eleanor understood, standing there with 2 ledgers against her chest, precisely how frightened William Carter was of a little man from Ohio who had been dead for 3 years. 50 extra to skip a year, she said. "That's a costly year." "That's my last word on it." "Then it's your last word." She got to the door and turned. "Mr. Carter, 2 days puts us at the 26th. What's the hurry after that?" "There's no hurry." "There's a hurry," Eleanor said. "You've had 11 weeks to buy me, and you did it in 4 minutes. Carter smiled, and it was not the church smile. "Thursday's stage," he said. "Don't be late for it, ma'am." She got across that yard with her heart slamming, and she did not let herself walk fast, and she was 8 steps from her door when Nathan came around the corner of the cookhouse and saw what she was carrying and stopped dead. "Ma'am?" "Don't." "What did you give him?" "My name," Eleanor said. "Now come inside and shut the door." She put the ledgers on the table and told him, and Nathan Cole stood there with his hat in his hands and heard it all the way through without one word. And when she'd finished, he sat down on the edge of her table, like a man whose legs had quit. "You'd not really sign it," he said. "Mr. Cole." "You'd not." "You are asking me that," Eleanor said, "having lied to me since April." "I am." "Then I hope it's an unpleasant 2 days for you." He almost laughed. It came out wrecked. "He kept the 75, she said. "Bell's year. Bell's year. and he paid $50 extra to keep it, which tells me there's something in that book he cannot survive, and it's in a strongbox in his office, and it is going to stay there." She was already pulling the lamp over. "How many men?" Nathan's face changed. "4, he said. "I asked for 6. "I know what you asked for." 4. Prather, Silas, Amos, and a fella named Ezra Hunt that's been here 2 years and can read." Nathan turned the hat once. "I asked 19. 19. I stood in that bunkhouse last night, and I asked 19 men to put their names to what was done to 'em, and 15 said no, and every one of 'em said it different, and every one of 'em was right." His hands closed on the brim. "Fella named Dutch has got a wife in Deer Lodge, and $40 in that store. Fella named Pike's got a brother in the county jail at Bitter Creek, and Rose the one feeds him. Old Merle said, 'Mr. Cole, I'm 58, and my back's gone, and if I lose this bunk in August, I'll winter in a barn and die in it.' And he ain't wrong. He ain't one bit wrong." "No?" Eleanor said. "He isn't. I told him I'd carry any man that got turned off. Wages, board work, all of it, till it was settled. And Merle said, 'With respect, sir, you've give a man your word before and rode to Texas on it.'" Nathan's voice went flat. "And there wasn't a thing on God's earth I could say back to that." Eleanor stopped with her hand on the ledger. "He said that to you?" "He did. And you stood there and took it." "I earned it." She looked at him a moment longer than she meant to. "4 is not enough," she said. "No, ma'am. 4 is a grudge. 4 is what a lawyer calls disgruntled hands." She flipped the store ledger open. "But 4, with a book that shows the same hand carrying the same lie 31 times a month for 5 years, that might be a hanging after all. Get me every hour of light you can. And Mr. Cole." "Ma'am?" "Amos is 17. "He is." "Did you ask him, or did he ask you?" "He come to me," Nathan said, "before I ever opened my mouth. He said, 'Mr. Cole, if there's a paper about my daddy, I want to be the one that signs it.'" Eleanor put her hand over her eyes for 1 second, which was all she permitted herself. "Then go," she said. "I've got 2 days." She had 31 hours as it turned out. She worked that night straight through and the next day, and she did not stop except to eat standing up. And by the second evening she had 411 pages copied, in her own shorthand, and her right hand had cramped into a claw twice, and she had wept exactly once, at 2 in the morning, over a line that read, "Bell J. Coat Winter, 14.00, dated 3 weeks before he went off a road." Nathan brought her coffee at midnight, and food she didn't eat, and stood in her doorway, and never came in. $14 for a coat, she said. "Ma'am." He charged a man $14 for a coat, and then he buried him and said fine words over him. She didn't look up. "I'd like you to know I don't hate you, Mr. Cole. I want to. It'd be restful. But there's only room in me for one man at a time, and it's not you." Nathan didn't say anything for a bit. "That's more than I've got coming," he said. "It is. Go away." He went. At noon on the second day, Silas came in without knocking and stood in the middle of her floor with his hat crushed in both hands and his face the color of ash. "Ma'am?" "Silas, I've got 4 hours. I got to say a thing, and if I don't say it now, I ain't never going to say it." Something in his voice made her put the pen down. "Sit. I'll stand." He swallowed. "That night in the bunkhouse when you told the men you wrote down every name. I've thought on it 2 days, and I ain't slept." "Silas?" "He give me something," the old man said. Eleanor went very still. "Who did? Bell?" Silas's mouth was shaking. "The morning he rode out. October 75. He come to the barn while I was harnessing, and he had this little book he was always writing in, and he says, 'Silas, I'm posting letters today, and if I don't come back by Sunday, you take this to the sheriff at Bitter Creek.'" He stopped, started again. "And I says, 'Mr. Bell, you'll be back by supper.' And he laughed at me, and he says, 'I expect I will.' And then he took his spectacles off and cleaned 'em on his shirt, which he done about 40 times a day, and he says, 'Silas, if a man ever asks you what happened here, Don't you lie for him. Don't you never lie for him. Silas? He never come back by Sunday, Silas said. Horse come back Friday. Eleanor could not feel her own hands. Where is it? Ma'am, I couldn't read a word of it. He was crying now and not doing anything about it. I couldn't read one word. And they said the horse spooked, and the coroner said it, and the deputy said it, and Mr. Carter paid for the burying, and I stood there at that grave with that little book inside my coat, and I thought, Silas, you take this to the sheriff, and the sheriff is that man's brother, and then it's you at the bottom of the cut, and ain't nobody to say different. He wiped his face with his whole forearm. So I put it in a coffee tin, and I buried it under the third post of the horse pen, and I have walked past it every day for 3 years. Nobody said anything. 3 years, Silas said. Ma'am, I have at supper next to that man 3 years. Eleanor got up and crossed the room and took that old man by both arms. Listen to me. I ain't nothing but a... Listen to me. You were one man alone and you could not read, and the law in this county is his in-law, and you were right. She held on. You were right, Silas. If you'd carried that book to Bitter Creek in '75, you'd have died on that road, and the book would have died with you, and Josiah Bell would have been a clumsy rider forever. You didn't hide it. You kept it. There's a difference, and it's the whole difference in the world. Silas broke down completely then, and Eleanor held on to him, and after a while he got his breath. You'll want a shovel, he said. The tin came up at 4 o'clock with 2 men keeping watch, and the notebook inside it was swollen and foxed, and the ink had gone brown, and Eleanor Hayes sat down in the dirt beside a fence post and read it. Josiah Bell had found the carry. It was on the 9th page in a hand that slanted left in the flat, furious shorthand of a man who has just understood something. The carry does not match. September closes 88.40. October opens 92.15. Not once. Every month. Every man. 5 years times 31 equals the store is a machine. And on the last page, dated the 14th of October 1875, wrote Merrick and Sons this day. Told W.C. nothing. He asked me twice today what I was writing. Told him a letter to my mother. He said, Josiah, there is no mail out of here I do not see. He was smiling when he said it. Eleanor closed the book. Get me Nathan Cole, she said. He came at a run. He knew, she said. Look at the last page. Bell told him nothing, and he knew anyway, and he said out loud to that man's face that there is no mail out of here I do not see, and 11 days later there was 40 foot of shale and a coroner and a bottle of whiskey. Nathan read it twice. This don't prove it, he said quietly. No. A lawyer'll say it don't prove one thing but a nervous fella and a bad road. It doesn't have to prove it, Eleanor said. Mr. Cole, we are not going to hang him for Josiah Bell. We're going to bury him under a store ledger and a wage book and a county record, and this notebook is going to sit on top of the pile so that no judge in this territory can pretend the whole thing is a widow's grudge over $8. She stood up. But it changes what we do tonight. Meaning I was going to hand him back 2 ledgers at 6 o'clock and a certificate and get on Thursday's stage with $300 and ride to Helena from Bitter Creek instead of Kansas and put my copies in front of Merrick on the 28th. She held up the notebook. This is Bell's own hand, and it names Carter, and it can't be copied. A copy of this is worth nothing. The thing itself is worth everything, and the minute he knows it exists, it goes in a stove. Then he don't know. He'll know by dark, Eleanor said, because there are 2 men who watched us dig it up, and one of them's Ezra Hunt, and one of them's a fellow named Pike, and Pike has a brother in the county jail that Deputy Rowe feeds every day. Nathan's head came up. Pike wasn't to be there. He came to help with the post, and I let him, she said. That's mine. I'll own it. How long? If he rides now, Bitter Creek's 5 hours. He's back by 2 in the morning with Rowe or Carter's up all night with a stove. Then we don't wait for Thursday, Nathan said. No. We go tonight. We go in 1 hour, Eleanor said, because I'm not leaving that 75 ledger in his box, and I know exactly how to get it. Nathan stared at her. "Ma'am, that book's in an iron strong box." "It's in an iron strong box, with a key in that man's vest pocket," Eleanor said. "And at 6 o'clock this evening, I am walking into his office to hand him a signed certificate of examination, and he is going to open that box to put it away, because a man does not leave a paper like that lying on a desk. Not that man. Not for 1 hour. And then, Eleanor said, I am going to be standing at his elbow when the box is open." Nathan Cole looked at her a long moment. "That's the coldest thing I ever heard a person say," he said. "I learned it from a man who wrote a widow a lying letter in April." "Yes, ma'am." "Get the wagon out of sight past the corrals with the team already in the traces. Prather drives. Amos and Silas in the bed with every page I've copied, and that notebook in Silas's shirt, not in a box, not in a bag, in his shirt." She was already moving. "Ezra Hunt rides for Bitter Creek right now, and he does not stop at the Mercantile, and he does not stop at the saloon. He goes to Hollis at the post office, and he puts him on a horse." "Hollis won't come." "Hollis will come," Eleanor said, "because Ezra is going to tell him that the little fellow with the spectacles has been in a coffee tin under a fence post for 3 years, and Mr. Hollis has been a coward for 4 years, and he is tired, Mr. Cole. I heard it in his voice across a counter. Men get tired of it." "And me," Eleanor stopped. "You stay away from that office," she said. "If you're within 50 feet of it, he'll smell it. Whatever else that man is, he has known you were something for 4 months, and he's been too proud to say it out loud. Ma'am, if he lays a hand on you, then it will be in his own office with his own strong box open, and a certificate with my signature on his desk, and that is the single best place in Montana Territory for it to happen." She looked up at him. "You wrote a letter to Kansas because you wanted a woman who'd already done the hardest thing there is. Well, Mr. Cole, this is what that looks like up close. It is not restful, and you do not get to change your mind about it now." Nathan Cole put his hat on. "No, ma'am," he said. "I don't reckon I do." She walked into that office at 6 o'clock with 2 ledgers under her arm and 1 sheet of paper on top of them. "Mrs. Hayes." "Mr. Carter." He took the ledgers. He set them on the corner of the desk and squared them, and then he picked up the sheet and read it, and Eleanor watched him read the whole of it, and she counted her own heartbeats and got to 22. "I have examined the books of Red Canyon Ranch for the period 1876 to the present, and I find—" He looked up. "This is not finished. It's not signed. It says, he turned it. It stops, mid-sentence." "It stops," Eleanor agreed, "because I've a condition, and I'd rather say it standing than write it, and be argued with by post." Carter set the paper down very carefully. "Say it. $350 is fine payment for a certificate," she said. "It's poor payment for the other thing you're buying, which is the rest of my life. I'd have Tom Prather's $109 struck, and Silas's $140, and Amos's $31.40, and the 4 of them released in writing before I sign my name." "No." "Then I'll want Mrs. Hayes." Carter came around the desk. "That is the 4th time this summer you have tried to buy those men, and I have told you every time that it don't work like that. It's not buying them. It's $180 off a $9,000 sale." He stopped. Eleanor let the silence run exactly 1 beat too long. "You've read Merrick's letter," Carter said. "You put it on my table." "I put a page on your table. I did not put a date on it." "The 1st of September's on the page," Eleanor said in the 2nd paragraph, "and if you'd wanted it kept, you oughtn't to have handed it to a woman who reads for a living." Carter looked at her for a long moment. Then he laughed one short, unpleasant sound. "You are the best I ever saw," he said. "Thank you. I mean it as an admission, not a compliment." He turned and unlocked the strongbox, and Eleanor's whole body went to water, and she made her feet stay exactly where they were. 180 struck off. "All right. I'll write it tonight, and you'll sign tomorrow, and Thursday you'll be on that stage. And I want you to know, ma'am, that in 11 years I have never once had to pay a person twice." The lid was up. Inside the coin bag, 3 deed boxes, 2 bundles of letters tied in string, one of them fat with envelopes she recognized at 100 paces because she had seen the same firm's hand that morning on her own table, and the 1875 ledger. "Mr. Carter," Eleanor said, "there's one more thing." "There is always one more thing with you." "The date on the wage book." "What of it?" "3rd of August. Prather's entry. It's wrote in a different ink than the ones above and below it, and I need to know whether that was you or the light, because if I certify a page with an alteration on it, I've hanged myself and not you." And William Carter, who had been foreman 11 years, who counted lamp oil, who had never once in his life been careless, turned his back on an open strongbox and bent over the wage book to look at an entry Eleanor Hayes had invented 40 minutes earlier at her own table. She was fast. She was not fast enough. She had the 75 ledger under her arm and had made it a full 4 steps when he came around. "Put it down." "No." "Mrs. Hayes?" He was between her and the door in 2 strides, and he was not smiling, and he was not smooth, and the 11 years came off him all at once. "Put that book down." "There's a boy of 17 in the yard," Eleanor said, "who was told in front of 30 men that his daddy was honest right up till the end. His daddy owed you $60 he never spent. It's in this book." "You have no idea what is in that book." "I know what's in the carry." Carter's face went white, and Eleanor Hayes, who had been afraid of that man since the 4th of June, watched the whole thing come apart in front of her and understood finally and completely that he had never been powerful. He had only ever been early. "Josiah Bell found it in October of 75, she said. "He wrote to Merrick and Sons on the 14th. He wrote in his own book that you told him to his face there is no mail out of here that you don't see. He was dead in 11 days. "That road widens at the switchback," Eleanor said. "It's the one place on the whole grade a man could stop and eat his dinner without worrying." Carter grabbed for the ledger. She swung the whole weight of it into his forearm and got the door open with her other hand and got out onto the step and screamed one word, and it was not help, and it was not murder. It was a name. Nathan Cole came across that yard the way a river comes down a canyon, and the men came with him, not 4, not 6, but every man who had been standing at the pens waiting to see what a summer was worth, because Eleanor had been wrong about that, too wrong, the way she had been wrong about a quiet fence mender in April. Carter got his hand on her arm at the bottom of the step. "Give it to me." "Take your hand off her." Carter turned. And there was Nathan, and there was Prather with his splint, and Silas and Amos and Ezra Hunt, back off a lathered horse, with a white-faced post clerk from Bitter Creek standing behind him, holding his hat like a man at a graveside, and Dutch and Pike, who had not ridden anywhere at all, and old Merle, who was 58 with a bad back, and behind him every last soul on the place. Carter looked at all of them. Then he did the only thing he had left, which was the thing he had never once done in 11 years. He raised his hand to her. Nathan Cole caught the foreman's wrist an inch before it reached Eleanor Hayes's face, and 40 men stopped breathing at once. He didn't shout. He didn't strike. He held that wrist the way a man holds a snake he's already decided not to kill, and he let the silence run long enough to hurt. Then he reached into his coat, pulled out a folded paper worn soft at the creases, and laid it flat on the boards. "Read the name," he said quietly. "Then tell me again who makes decisions here." Nobody moved. Carter's arm was still up, and the thing on his face wasn't pain. It was calculation. He had spent his whole life measuring rooms, and for the first time in 11 years at Red Canyon, the room was measuring him back. "Let go of me," Carter said. "I aim to, directly." "You are a hired hand." "I've been called worse." He let go. Carter jerked back and turned to the yard and found that smooth pitch he used at church suppers. "You've all seen it. A drifter putting hands on the man who signs your pay." "Read the name," Nathan said. "I'll do no such thing." "Then I'll read it." He put one finger on the paper, the way a man sets his hand on a Bible. "Territorial land patent." Section 11 through 22, Red Canyon Holdings water rights on the North Fork recorded in Helena, 1871. Owner of record, Nathan Cole. Somebody dropped a hat. Nobody picked it up. Anybody can carry a paper, Carter said. That's true. Anybody can forge one. That's true too. So send for the recorder. Send for the marshal while you're at it. Nathan lifted his head. I'd take it kindly. You've been lying to every man on this place. 3 months of it. Eating our beef. I've been listening, Nathan said. There's a difference. You'd not know it. And her... Carter's arm came up pointing, and Eleanor did not look away from it. Did you lie to her too? Yes, Nathan said. He didn't dress it up. Yes, he said again. I did. I lied to that woman from April to August, and there ain't a day of it I'll get back, and she has told me so to my face, and she was right every time. He turned to the yard. And I lied to every one of you. I laid in that bunkhouse and let you take me for one of your own, and I watched him take $8 a month out of Tom Prather's wages with my own name on the paper that let him do it. Nobody spoke. So I ain't standing here to be thanked, Nathan said. I'm standing here to be counted, same as everybody else. Then Amos stepped forward, 17 years old, and his voice went in 3 directions before it came out. Mr. Carter, my daddy's name was Isaac, and he never owed you $60. Carter said, Boy, he never owed you $60, Amos said. And it's in that book she's holding, and I can't read it, but she can. And she's going to read it out loud in front of a judge, and I'm going to be sitting in that room when she does. Amos, Carter said, your father was a... And Tom Prather stepped in front of the boy with his splinted hand held up like a flag. Don't, Prather said. Not one more time. Not one more word about a dead man in front of his own son. You've had 5 years of that and you're done. Tom, I have carried you. You've carried me $109 deep for a coat I never bought, Prather said. And I signed for it with a cross because I can't write my own name, and that's the God's truth, and I'll say it in a courthouse, and I'll say it slow. And I'll say it, said Silas. And me, said Ezra Hunt. And me, said Dutch, who had a wife in Deer Lodge and $40 in that store. And me, said Merle, who was 58 with a bad back and had to say it twice because it didn't come out the first time. And then it went around that yard like fire in dry grass. Man after man. Most of them not raising their voices. Most of them looking at the dirt while they said it, 31 men putting a name to a thing at last, and Eleanor Hayes stood on that step with a ledger under her arm and understood that everything she had written down since June had just become worth something. Mr. Hollis, she said, would you tell them what you told me in your store? The post clerk went the color of paper. Ma'am, You said you were tired of being a coward. You rode 19 miles on a borrowed horse. Say it here first and it'll be easier to say in Helena. Hollis took his hat off. 4 years, he said. Every letter come out of Helena for a coal at Red Canyon that man signed for, and carried off, and I let him, and there was 3 of 'em this spring alone from Merrick and Sons, and there was letters in 75 went the other way that never got no answer, and I knowed all of it, and I never said one word. He looked at Nathan. I'm sorry, sir. I'm real sorry. Carter said, That is a matter between me and my employer's agents. It's a federal matter, Eleanor said. The yard went quiet. Mr. Carter, you are welcome to be right about a great many things, she said. You were right that the power of attorney is sound. You were right that 31 crosses in a wage book aren't worth much on their own. You were right that a court would look at a man who rode to Texas and signed a paper he didn't read and think poorly of him. She came down 1 step. But you took mail out of a United States post office for 4 years that wasn't yours, and there is no clever thing you can say about a carry that makes that anything but what it is. Carter said nothing, and on the 1st of September, Eleanor said the Bitter Creek Land and Cattle Company was to record $9,000 against this place, a company whose registered agent by his own filing is William H. Carter. You did not sell this ranch to a buyer, sir. You sold it to yourself twice, and the second time you were going to sell the grass to the man who already owned the water, and you were going to do it with the signature of a man you had told this yard was dead. Somebody in the back said, "Dead." "He told this table in July that Mr. Cole died the winter before last," Eleanor said. "It's in front of 30 witnesses. Every man here heard it. And that, not the deed, not the wage book, not the carry, was the sound that went through those men." Carter turned around slowly and looked at the yard, and Eleanor watched him do the arithmetic and come out the other side with nothing. "You've no standing," he said to Nathan. "You'll take the 9,000 and be glad of it. You took the drafts 4 years running and never asked a question. And there's a word in the law for a man who takes the money." "Ratification," Nathan said. Carter stopped. "I know the word," Nathan said. "Merrick wrote it to me in April, and I've had it in my head every day since. And you're right. I took them drafts. 4 years. Never opened one." He put his hat back on. "Which is why I never come here in April with a paper in my hand. It'd not have been enough, and I knew it. So I come and got hired at $26 a month, and I mended your fence for 4 months, and I waited on the one thing you could not talk your way around." "And what is that?" "Her," Nathan said. The circuit judge came out from Helena on the 29th of August, with a deputy United States Marshal riding beside him, and they sat in the front room of the Bitter Creek Hotel for 2 days because there was no courthouse fit for it, and Eleanor Hayes read out loud for 9 hours. She read the carry. 61 instances in the store ledger where the balance forwarded exceeded the column above it in one hand, never once in the men's favor. She read the wage book against her own record of 31 men, name by name, and the deputy marshal stopped her twice to ask her to slow down, and she did not apologize for the speed. She read the 4 conveyances of water frontage on the North Fork to the Bitter Creek Land and Cattle Company. And then she read the company's own registration, and then she read them again in the other order so that nobody in that room could pretend to have misheard it. She read Josiah Bella's notebook last. She read the 9th page, and then she read the 14th of October, 1875, and then she closed it and set it down on the table and said, "Mr. Bell wrote to Merrick and Sons on that date. The firm has confirmed by wire that no such letter was ever received." Nobody said anything for a while after that. 19 men testified, not 4, not 6, 19, one after another. Most of them turning their hats in their hands, most of them saying it in under 2 minutes, and the 19th was a boy of 17 who could not read a word of it, and who said, "My daddy's name was Isaac, and he didn't owe that man $1, and then had to stop, and the judge waited, and the whole room waited, and he got there." Carter's counsel came out from Helena at his own expense and argued for a day and a half. He argued that the instrument was sound, and it was. He argued that the wage entries were signed, and they were. He argued that Nathan Cole had taken 4 years of drafts without inquiry and had thereby ratified the acts of his agent, and the judge granted him that with barely a pause. And then the judge said the thing that ended it in about 11 words. "Counselor, no principal can ratify what his agent concealed from him." The conveyances to the Bitter Creek Land and Cattle Company were set aside as self-dealing. The power of attorney was revoked for breach of trust. The $9,000 sale, unrecorded by 4 days, died on the table. The court found $11,240 in wages and store balances taken from 31 men over 5 years, and ordered restitution out of the proceeds of the water parcels, which meant Carter's own land paid it. The deputy marshal took him on the federal count for the mail. And on the matter of Josiah Bell, the judge said only that the record raised questions that a coroner in 1875 had not seen fit to ask, and that he would be directing that the file be reopened, and that Deputy Rowe would be answering for it in another room on another day. Carter did not look at Nathan when they took him out. He looked at Eleanor, and he stopped, and he said, "You'd have signed it. If I'd struck the 180, you'd have signed it." "No," Eleanor said. "You would." "Mr. Carter," she said, "the only reason you believe that is that you have never once in your life met a person who would not." They came back to Red Canyon on the 1st of September, and Nathan Cole stood up in that yard and read out every man's name and every man's figure, and paid them in coin off the tailgate of a wagon. Prather's 109 struck, and 11 months of $8 beside it. Silas's 140, Merle's Dutch's Pikes, every one, and when he got to the end, he stopped and looked at the paper a while and said, "Amos, Isaac's boy." "Sir?" "$60 your daddy never owed, and there ain't a court can give a man back what that cost him." "No, sir." "Come get it anyhow." And the boy came up and took it, and then he stood there and didn't move, and Nathan said, "Something else, son." "Mr. Cole?" Amos's ears had gone red. "Mrs. Hayes says a cross ain't a signature." "She's right." "I'd like to learn to write my name," Amos said, "before somebody hands me another paper." Nathan Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Get 30 chairs into the cookhouse," and he said it loud enough for the whole yard to hear it. "And any man that wants to learn to read his own wages, you be in there at 7 o'clock, and I'll be in there at 7 o'clock, and there ain't a man on this place going to laugh at another one for it." 26 men came. 26 men came, and not one of them sat down. "There's chairs," Nathan said. "Yes, sir." "Then sit in 'em." Nobody moved. Merle finally said it because at 58, a man has less to lose than he thinks. "It ain't the chairs, Mr. Cole. It's that a fella don't much care to be seen not knowing a thing in front of 30 others that don't know it neither. Then you'll all be even. That ain't how shame works, sir." "No," Nathan said. "It ain't." He stood there a minute. Then he took the chalk and wrote 4 letters on the board and set the chalk down. "That's my boy's name," he said. "Samuel. He was 6, and he was learning it when he died, and he never got the last letter right. He'd make it backwards every time, and I'd say, 'Sam, you've done it backwards again,' and he'd say, 'Well, it's my name, and I'll have it how I want it.'" His voice didn't do anything much. "I've not said that name out loud in 4 years, and I've just said it in front of 26 men. Now sit down." They sat down. It went badly for about 40 minutes. Nathan Cole could read anything put in front of him, and could not teach a living soul to do it. And by the 3rd quarter hour, he had Dutch nearly in tears over the difference between a B and a D. "Mr. Cole." He turned. Eleanor was in the doorway. "You're doing it wrong," she said. "I know it. You're teaching them letters. They don't want letters, they want their wages." She came in and picked up the chalk out of his hand without asking for it and wrote, "Thomas Prather, $30, received $22, and turned around." "Mr. Prather, which of those numbers is bigger?" "The 30. "How do you know?" Prather looked at it. "'Cause I've been robbed of the difference 11 months running, ma'am." "That's right. You already know the arithmetic. You've known it in your bones for 5 years. She tapped the board. "All I'm going to teach you is where it lives on a page. Amos, come up here." The boy went up like a man walking to a gallows. "Your name?" "I can't." "5 letters. You've been carrying them your whole life. Take the chalk." It took him 11 minutes, and he broke the chalk twice, and his hand was shaking so hard that Silas had to look at the ceiling. And when he was done, there was a word on that board that a 17-year-old boy had made himself, and the boy stood back and looked at it and didn't say anything at all. "Say it," Eleanor said. "Amos. Louder. Amos." And 26 men came up out of those chairs hollering like it was a horse race, and old Merle beat on the table with the flat of his hand, and Nathan Cole stood at the back of that cookhouse with his arms folded and did not trust himself to speak. Afterward, Eleanor cleaned the board and did not look at him. "I'm on Thursday's stage," she said. Nathan didn't answer for a moment. "You've a certificate to finish." "I've no certificate to finish. There's nothing to certify. The books are evidence now, and they belong to a federal court." She set the rag down. "I was engaged by letter for a piece of work. The work's done." "Ma'am?" "Don't. I'd not ask you to stay for me." "Good, because I'd not stay for you." She turned around then. "I'd stay for that boy, and you know that, and I'll thank you not to use him." Nathan Cole looked at her a long moment. "No, ma'am," he said. "I won't." And he didn't. That was the terrible part. He didn't say one word about it for 4 days, and Silas said plenty. "He ain't stopping you." "No." "He ain't so much as asked." He asked me once, Silas, in April, in a letter with no name on it. He doesn't get to ask twice. Ma'am, that's the coldest. Yes, Eleanor said. It is. She was packed by Tuesday evening. She was still packed at 9 o'clock Wednesday morning when a man in a town coat rode into Red Canyon on a livery horse and asked very politely for the owner of record. His name was Whitcomb. He was from the Territorial Stockman's Bank in Helena, and he had a leather case and the manner of a man who has delivered bad news often enough to have stopped feeling it. You'd be Mr. Cole. I would. I'm sorry to come out on such an errand. He opened the case. I hold a mortgage. Nathan said, On what? On 4 parcels of water frontage along the North Fork of the river, executed the 11th of March last by the Bitter Creek Land and Cattle Company in the sum of $6,400, of which not one payment has been made since June. Whitcomb laid the paper on the rail. The court in Bitter Creek has set aside the conveyances of that land to the company. It has not set aside my mortgage, sir, because my bank was not a party and was not heard, and it will not be set aside because we are a purchaser for value without notice. Eleanor had come out onto the step behind them. Say the rest, she said. Whitcomb looked at her. Ma'am, you've a rehearsed piece and you're 4 sentences in. Say the rest. The rest is that the note is in default and the bank will proceed to foreclose on the water parcels in 30 days. Whitcomb said, and that the restitution ordered by the court, $11,240 to be paid out of the proceeds of those parcels, will not be paid out of them because there are no proceeds. There is a debt of $6,400 sitting on top of them. Nobody said anything. Mr. Cole. Whitcomb said, I want to be understood. My bank did not steal your wages. My bank lent money in good faith against recorded title to a Montana corporation. Whatever that corporation's agent did to you is a matter between you and him, and I am sorry for it. But a bank cannot be made to eat a man's crimes, or there'd be no money lent in this territory at all. And then where would any of you be? You lent $6,400 to William Carter, Eleanor said. I lent it to a company. Whose registered agent? Ma'am, I know the argument. I have heard the argument. It is a fine argument, and it is worth precisely nothing, because the law asks whether my bank had notice, and my bank had no notice. He closed the case. 30 days. He rode out at 9:30, and by 10 o'clock, every man on Red Canyon knew, because Pike had been standing at the corner of the cookhouse. They came to the main house in a body at noon. Prather did the talking which nobody expected, least of all Prather. We'll give it back. Nathan said, No. You ain't heard the figure. I don't need the figure. It's 4,000 and some, Prather said. That's what's left of it. Some of it's spent, some's gone to Deer Lodge and Bitter Creek, and a fellow's brother's fine, and there's 2 men rode out Monday with theirs, and I don't blame 'em. But there's 4,000 and some standing in this yard right now, and it's yours if you'll take it. I'll not take it. Mr. Cole, Tom, Nathan's voice went down. That money was took out of your pocket $8 at a time for 5 years, with my name on the paper that let him do it. If I take $1 of it back to save my own grass, then what happened in that hotel in Bitter Creek was a performance. He shook his head once. It ain't going to be a performance. Then you'll lose the ranch. Then I'll lose the ranch. And us with it, said Merle. That one landed. Say it out. Nathan said. There ain't nothing to say out. Bank takes the water. There ain't a cow lives on this grass past next July, and this outfit's done, and 31 men that just testified in a federal hearing room go looking for work in this county with that on their name. Merle spread his hands. Sir, I've took your money, and I'll take your side. But don't you stand there and be noble at me. Noble's a thing a man does with his own hide. You'd be doing it with mine. Nobody breathed. Nathan Cole took that all the way down, the way he had taken. You've give a man your word before and rode to Texas on it, and Eleanor watched him take it and hated how well he did it. That's fair, he said. It ain't fair, it's just true. It's both. Nathan looked around that yard. All right, here's what I've got, and it ain't much. I've got 16,000 acres of grass and a bank fixing to take the water off it. Grass without water's worth about 9 cents, so I'll not lie to a one of you and say I've a plan. Eleanor said, I have. Every head turned. Ma'am. I said I have a plan, and I'd thank you all to go eat your dinner, because I'm going to need a horse and $1.60. The recorder in Bitter Creek remembered her. You're the lady that read the corporation book. I am. I'd like it again. And I'd like something else if it's kept. Ma'am, I keep everything. It's the whole of the job. Do you keep a record of who reads the books? He blinked at her. There's the fee register. Every abstract, every search name and date, and the $1.60. How far back? Statehood'll come before I run out of it. Then I'd like the year, Eleanor said. January to March. It took her 2 hours and 11 minutes. She found it on a page for the 28th of February abstract of Title N Fork Parcels, 1 to 4, J.R. Whitcomb Act, Territorial Stockman's Bank, Helena 1.60. And then she found the second thing, which was better, and which made her put both hands flat on the table. Because the recorder in Bitter Creek kept everything, including a note in his own hand in the margin of his own register of a question a customer had asked him, and he had answered. Inquired whether Carter W.H. signed as agent for company, same as Carter W.H. signed as attorney for coal, on the conveyances of 75 to 78. Advised same man. Advised he look at both books. Sir, Eleanor said. Did he look at both books? The recorder came over and read his own handwriting and scratched his neck. He did, he said. He sat right there where you're sitting, and he read the conveyances, and he read the registration, and I recall it because he never said one word the whole time, and then he asked me, was I sure? And I said, sir, it's the same hand and the same name, and I've wrote 'em both in myself. Eleanor Hayes sat very still. Would you say that in Helena? She said. I'd say it in church. Whitcomb was at the hotel in Bitter Creek for the night, and she did not send word ahead, because a man who is not expecting you cannot arrange his face. Mrs. Hayes. Mr. Whitcomb. If you've come to argue the law, I've come to argue the arithmetic, Eleanor said. It's the only thing I've ever been any good at, and you'll find it goes faster. May I sit? You may. She put one sheet on the table. On the 28th of February, you paid $1.60 to the recorder of this county for an abstract of title on 4 parcels of water frontage on the North Fork. That's your name in his fee register, and it's your hand on the receipt, and I've got a copy of both certified this afternoon. Whitcomb said nothing. 11 days later, your bank lent $6,400 against that same water. That is the ordinary practice of— It is the ordinary practice, Eleanor agreed. It's a careful bank. I've a great deal of respect for careful. Careful's what I do. She laid the second sheet down. Which is why I'd like you to explain to me how a careful man reads an abstract showing 4 conveyances signed W.H. Carter attorney, in fact, for the owner, and reads a corporate registration in the same office on the same afternoon showing W.H. Carter, registered agent of the buyer, and then goes back to Helena and writes the words, purchaser for value, without notice, in his own file. Whitcomb's face did not move, but his hands did. That's a coincidence of names, he said. That's what you'd like it to be. There are a great many Carters. There is one, Eleanor said in the recorder's own margin note in the recorder's own hand dated the 28th of February, recording that a customer named Whitcomb asked him whether the 2 Carters were the same man, and recording that he was told they were, and recording that he was advised to read both books, and that he did. She put the third sheet down. And that gentleman is prepared to say so under oath. He told me he'd say it in church, which I took as enthusiasm. The room was very quiet. You'll want to think, Eleanor said, so I'll go on talking. A bank that has actual notice that the seller and the buyer are the same man is not a purchaser without notice. It is a lender that saw self-dealing on the face of a public record and lent against it anyway because the rate was good. That is not a crime, Mr. Whitcomb. I'm not saying it's a crime. I'm saying it is a thing your directors would rather not read about in the Helena Independent over a picture of a boy of 17 who was charged $60 his dead father never spent. You would not. I have testified for 2 days against men bigger than you, Eleanor said in a hearing room in Wichita with my husband, 3 weeks in the ground alone for nothing. Ask yourself what I'd do for 31 men who just stood up in a hotel front room and said their names out loud. Whitcomb sat back. What do you want? He said. The water released. $6,400, Mrs. Hayes. You will get $6,400, Eleanor said, and you will get it from the man who signed the note, because William Carter has 411 acres in this county. In his own name, a house in Helena, and $1,160 of ranch money that he paid himself for stolen water, and the court has already ordered restitution out of his estate. You are a secured creditor of a man who is presently in a federal cell and who is going to be selling everything he owns to pay lawyers. You will be paid, sir. You will simply be paid by the correct person. And in the meantime, the note is in default. Then extend it. On what security? And Eleanor Hayes said, on 16,000 acres of grass that has been in one man's family since 1871, and that has never had $1 borrowed against it in its life. Nathan Cole will sign the note, not the company's, his own. And he'll pay it because he has spent 4 months mending fence at $26 a month for the privilege of not being the kind of man who doesn't. Whitcomb looked at her for a long, long moment. You are very hard, he said. I have had a hard summer. He rode out to Red Canyon the next morning and put a paper on the rail, and Nathan Cole looked at it and did not pick it up. Sir. Read it out. Mr. Cole, it's 4 pages of... Read it out. It'll take a quarter hour. Then it'll take a quarter hour, Nathan said, and them men'll stand here and hear it, because the last paper I signed without hearing it cost 31 people 5 years of their wages, and a fella from Ohio his life. Read it out. Whitcomb read it out, all 4 pages. And when he got to the end, Nathan asked him 3 questions about the rate, and one about what happened in a dry year. And then he borrowed a pen off Eleanor and signed his own name on his own land in front of every man on the place, slowly the way a man signs when he has decided to look at it. That's done, Whitcomb said. It's done. Mr. Cole, the banker hesitated. For what it's worth, I did ask the recorder that question, in February. I know you did. I have thought about it since Tuesday, and I find I would rather have asked it louder. Most of us would, Nathan said. The Deputy United States Marshal came out on the 9th of September to inventory the strongbox because it was federal evidence now, and he did it on the long table in the cookhouse with 2 witnesses, and Eleanor writing it down, because she was the only person within 19 miles who could keep a list. It took most of the afternoon. Coin, deed boxes. The bundles of letters, 41 of them addressed to N. Cole Red Canyon, from Merrick & Sons Helena, 3 of them still sealed. A pocket watch. A promissory note from Deputy Rhoda Carter for $200, dated 1876, never paid, which the marshal read twice, and then set aside by itself and said, well now. And at the bottom, folded inside a woman's handkerchief, that had been laundered and pressed a pair of steel-rimmed spectacles with the left lens cracked across the corner. Nobody said anything. Then Silas stood up. Ma'am, he said, and his voice had gone strange. Would you ask that man, can I hold them? Silas. Would you ask him? The marshal said, you may look, you'll not touch. The old man came around the table and bent over and looked at them for a long time without breathing. He cleaned 'em on his shirt, he said. 40 times a day. He done it the last morning I ever seen him standing in the barn while I was harnessing, and he says, Silas, don't you never lie for him. Silas straightened up. That's Josiah Bell's spectacles, that's them, and he wore 'em every waking minute of his life, and he could not see the end of his own arm without 'em. You're certain, the marshal said. Mister, I have buried 2 wives and a brother, and I could not tell you the color of a one of their eyes. I know them spectacles. How'd they come here? That's what I'd like somebody to ask him, Silas said. The marshal wrote for a while. Then he looked up. Mrs. Hayes, read me the coroner's return again. She read it. Deceased, thrown from horse at the switchback, grade injuries consistent with fall. No other person present. No property upon the body of value effects returned to the ranch. No property upon the body, the marshal said. That's what it says. A fella that can't see the end of his arm goes off a horse, and his spectacles ain't upon the body, nor at the bottom of the cut, nor broke on the road, and 3 years later, they're folded in a handkerchief in his foreman's strongbox under the money. He capped the pen. I've been 11 years at this. I've never yet seen a man keep a thing like that unless it meant something to him, and there is only one thing it can mean. Eleanor said quietly, It means he was there. It means he was there, the marshal said, and it means a coroner wrote no property on a form he never troubled to fill out honest. And that coroner is the deputy's brother, and that deputy owed the foreman $200 since '76. He stood up. Ma'am, I'll want the whole of this in your hand by morning. You'll have it tonight. She went to Helena on the 14th because Merrick's firm required her deposition, and she went to the jail because she had decided in the wagon that she would rather do a hard thing than wonder about it for the rest of her life. Carter came to the bars looking exactly the same, which she had not expected and did not like. Mrs. Hayes. Mr. Carter. They've give me a lawyer from Butte who's frightened of me. It's very restful. He almost smiled. You've come to gloat. I've come to ask you one question. Ask it. Did you kill Josiah Bell? My counsel would. Your counsel isn't here. Carter looked at her through the bars for a good while. I had 11 years at that place, he said. 11. Cole rode off to Texas and left it to rot, and I made it pay. I fed those men. I doctored them. I buried 4 of them, and I paid for 2 of the funerals out of my own pocket, and there is not one soul in that yard who'll say so now. You charged Isaac $14 for a coat. I charged Isaac what the coat was worth and a little besides, and he had a coat, ma'am, in January, which he'd not have had otherwise, and he was warm in it. His voice rose for the first time she had ever heard. Every one of them wanted the thing, and none of them wanted the price, and I was the only man in that valley willing to write the price down. That's all I ever was, the man who wrote it down. You didn't answer me. No, Carter said. I did not. Why keep them? And for 1 second, the same second she had seen in her own kitchen in June, when she asked him about the last bookkeeper, William Carter's face did something. Because he was the only one who ever caught it, he said. Eleanor stood there. 11 years, Carter said. 31 men, 4 owner's agents, 2 territorial assessors, and a bank. Nobody ever checked the carry. Nobody. And then a little fella from Ohio in cheap spectacles found it in 9 weeks and wrote a letter about it. And I have thought about him every day since, and I could not. He stopped. I could not put them in the ground. Mr. Carter. What? That is the closest thing to a confession that anyone will ever get out of you, Eleanor said. And I want you to know that I am going to write it down in this notebook the moment I am out of this room with the date and the hour, and I am going to sign it, and I am going to give it to a deputy United States Marshal because that is what I do. I write things down. Carter looked at her, and then he laughed a real one ugly and surprised the laugh of a man who has just been shown the bill. I know it, he said. God help me, ma'am. I've known it since June. The stage went on Thursday the 17th of September, and Eleanor Hayes was on it. They came out to see her off, all of them, and it was the worst hour of her life, and she'd already had several to compare it to. Prather couldn't do it at all. He got as far as, "Ma'am, I," and then shook her hand with his bad one, which she understood was the entire speech. Silas cried and did not apologize for it. Amos gave her a piece of paper folded in 4, and she opened it, and it said, Eleanor Hayes, in a hand like a fence in a windstorm, every letter fought for. I practiced it 40 times, he said. Amos, I wanted you to have your own name off somebody that couldn't wrote it in June. She had to stand very still for a moment. That's the finest thing anybody's ever given me, she said, and I'm going to say so for the rest of my life. Nathan Cole was the last one, and all he did was take his hat off. Ma'am, Mr. Cole, I'll not ask you. I know you won't. I've thought about it 4 days, and I've had about 9 speeches, and every one of them was me arranging you again. He turned the brim once. So I'll say this, and it's all the notes signed, the men are paid, the water's ours, and there ain't a piece of it that'd have happened without you, and every man here knows it, and I've told 'em so, and I'll go on telling 'em after you're gone. That's a good speech. It ain't a speech, it's a receipt. He stepped back. Safe travels, Mrs. Hayes. And he did not follow the stage, and he did not send a man after it, and he did not stand in the road. And Eleanor Hayes rode 19 miles to Bitter Creek, being furious about all 3. The letter came to Kansas on the 11th of October. She knew the hand before she had it out of the box, and she stood in that post office and did not open it for a full minute, and then she did. Mrs. Hayes, in April I wrote you a letter with lies in it and no name on it, and you have never once let me forget it, and you were right not to. So I am going to write the true one now, and I am going to send it, and then I am going to leave you alone about it, because you have told me to my face that I take a thing before I ask for it, and I have decided that I would rather ask for a thing and not get it. My name is Nathan Cole. I am 38 years old. I own 16,000 acres in Montana Territory, and there is a note of $6,400 against them that I signed in front of 31 men, and I will be 9 years paying it, and I have got $206 to my name. In the winter of '74, I lost my wife Ruth and my boy Samuel, and I did not have the courage to stay and look at the place where they'd been, so I put my whole life in a stranger's hand and rode to Texas and did not open a letter for 4 years. 31 men paid for that. A man from Ohio named Josiah Bell paid worse. There is nothing I can do about either one of those things, and I have stopped trying to think of a way. What I can tell you is what is true today. The cookhouse has 29 men in it, 4 nights a week, and Amos is teaching the beginners because he is better at it than either of us was. Tom Prather's hand set crooked, and he can hold a rope with it. Silas has took to reading his own store account out loud at supper, slow to whoever will listen, whether they will or not. There is a schoolmaster coming in the spring from Deer Lodge, and I have wrote the county about a school for the whole valley, which they have not answered, and I am going to keep writing them, because I have learned this summer what a letter is worth. I am not going to tell you that I cannot run this place without you. I can run it. I ran it badly for 4 years by not running it at all, and I am running it honest now, and I will keep on. I am going to tell you the other thing instead, and then I am done. Every evening from the middle of August, I have gone down to that creek and stood there about a half hour, like a fool with a hat on, and Silas has been laughing at me since the first week. I have not gone down there to think about the ranch. I have thought about a woman who came out here with 1 trunk and no reason to trust anybody, and found in 4 hours what nobody had found in 11 years, and who stood in a yard with a book under her arm and made 31 frightened men brave, and who told me the truth about myself in a bunkhouse in front of everyone, when it would have been easier to hate me quietly. I have not any right to ask you for one thing, and I know it. So I am not asking you to come back and keep my books, and I am not asking you to come back for those men because you told me not to use them, and I won't. I am asking whether you would come back for me. If the answer is no, I will not write again, and you will not hear one word of complaint out of me. And there will be a place at Red Canyon for you until I am in the ground, if you ever want it for any reason at all. If the answer is yes, there is a stage into Bitter Creek on Thursdays, and I will be at that station every Thursday from now until you come, or until you write and tell me to quit, and I have told Silas so, and he has already made his opinion known at some length. Yours truly, Nathan Cole. P.S. Amos wanted it wrote down that he can now spell water wages and Montana, and that he done the last one without help. She read it 4 times standing up. Then she went home and sat at her sister-in-law's kitchen table and read it twice more, and her sister-in-law said, "Well, who's it from?" And Eleanor Hayes said, "A fence mender," and laughed until she cried. She wrote back the same night. It was 11 words long, and it cost 3 cents, and it said, "I am not coming back to keep your books. E.H." She let him have that for 18 days, which she considered generous, and she was not on the stage the Thursday after, nor the one after that. And she found out later from Silas that he had gone to that station every single week regardless, and had sat there 4 hours each time, and had told the station agent he was waiting on freight. She came in on the 5th of November. He was on the platform before the wheels stopped, and he got about 2 steps, and then stopped himself, and stood there with his hat in his hands and did not touch her. Mrs. Hayes. Mr. Cole. You wrote you weren't coming to keep my books. I'm not. No, ma'am. I'll keep them, Eleanor said, because there isn't another soul in this territory fit to, and because I'd not sleep knowing you were doing it. But I am not here for that, and I'd have that understood at the front in the road in front of the station agent before one more thing gets built on a misunderstanding at this place. Nathan Cole swallowed. Then say what you're here for, he said, because I've stood on this platform 8 Thursdays and I've got no more guessing left in me. You asked me a question in a letter. I did. You asked it plain and you signed your own name to it and you didn't arrange one thing about it. Her voice had gone unsteady and she let it. Do you know that's the first thing anybody's asked me since I was 24 years old? Everyone else told. My father told, and Daniel told, and Carter told, and you told all summer long. Every one of you deciding what Eleanor could stand. She looked up at him. And then you went and asked. And I have been furious for 3 weeks because you finally did the one thing that would work. Ma'am, if the answer's no, the answer is yes, you great fool. He didn't move. Say it again, he said. Yes. And Nathan Cole put his hat on the platform, which was the least practical thing he had done in 4 years, and took her hands and stood there holding them in front of a station agent, 2 women loading a buckboard, and Silas, who had driven the wagon in, and was making no attempt whatsoever to look elsewhere. They were married in the cookhouse on the 2nd of December by the circuit judge who came out from Helena and said he had never in 11 years been asked back to a place he'd held a hearing in and found it a considerable improvement on his usual travels. 29 men crowded in, and Prather stood up with Nathan, and Amos read the whole of the certificate out loud, himself, slow all of it, and did not miss a word, and Silas gave the bride away, and cried through the entire proceeding, and told everybody afterward that he had something in his eye since October. William Carter was convicted in federal court in Helena in March of 1879 on 19 counts of theft of United States mail, and sentenced to 11 years. Deputy Rowe resigned in January one day, before the marshal came for him, and testified against his own brother-in-law about a coroner's return written in October of 1875 for a bottle of whiskey and $200 of debt forgiven. Carter was never tried for Josiah Bell. There was no witness, and there never would be. But the file was reopened and stayed open, and the finding of the second coroner's jury, empaneled in the spring, was that the deceased came to his death by means unknown and not by accident, and that finding was printed in the Helena Independent, along with his name spelled correctly, and American Sons paid for a stone at Bitter Creek with money nobody would admit to sending. Silas walked the 19 miles to see it set. He was 72 years old. It says his whole name, he told them when he got back. I read it myself. The school opened in the spring of '81 in a building on the North Fork that Nathan Cole put up with his own hands and 11 other men's, and the county paid the schoolmaster's salary after 2 years of letters, and there were 34 children in it by '84, and the trustees voted at the first meeting to call it the Bell School, and Amos Wilder 23 by then, and foreman of Red Canyon, and the only man in the valley who could look at a store ledger and tell you inside a minute whether the carry was honest, was the one who moved it. Eleanor kept the books for 41 years and never once let another soul touch the carry. And on an evening late in the summer of 1879, before any of the rest of it had happened, the two of them walked down to that creek where she had gone to get away from the ledgers, and he had gone to stand like a fence post with a hat on, and they stood there a while and neither of them said anything because by then they had gotten good at it. I spent 4 years hiding from folks that only wanted my name, Nathan said. And now? He looked at her. Now there's a woman on this place that knew every rotten thing I'd done before she knew what I was worth, he said, and stayed anyhow. I'd not trade that for the whole North Fork. Eleanor Cole took her husband's hand. Then we'll keep it honest, she said, the both of us out loud in front of everybody for as long as we've got, and no man will ever again take $1 out of this place that he didn't earn. And no man ever did.